Welcome to racing fans and Formula Sim racing fans in particular to round number 14 in the ACE Championships of Formula Sim racing. This is the 14th of 16 rounds, so after this race there's only 2 left to go, and we're coming to you from the fabulous and unique Suzuka circuit in Japan. Incredible racetrack. The stats don't tell the full story. 5.807 kilometers, 18 turns, and a scene of so many historic battles. Whenever we come here, we think of that incredibly famous contact in the final chicane between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. We think of Senna taking Prost out at the end of the following season, and all the incredible events that have occurred there. Damon Hill securing the World Championship title there back in '96. An interesting little anecdote, the lap record, if you go and look at Wikipedia, the lap record says that it's held by Kimi Raikkonen, the race lap record from 2005 with a 1:31.54. But we've got a bit of an update on that, because 1 week ago a certain driver called Lewis Hamilton beat that lap record by 4.2 seconds by recording a 1 minute 27.3 in the race that he so beautifully won last weekend here at Suzuka. 53 lap race, and for those of you new to Formula Sim racing, this is the world's most established and oldest and highest standard of sim racing league. We're currently into season 16 of Formula Sim racing, so it's a 17-year-old sim racing organisation. ACE is, if you like, our level 2. We start with Pro, then we have ACE, then we have World Championship. So there's only 20 odd spots on the grid in World Championship. So here we have in ACE some of the very finest sim racing drivers in the world. We're using the unparalleled simulation called rFactor 2. And if you're looking at the stream at the moment, you'll be seeing there's a bit of dampness on the track. We've just been coming out of a bit of a wet practice session. So we have a track that's wet but drying. And that's courtesy of the fact that in rFactor 2 we use live real-world weather. So we're plugged into a weather station in downtown Suzuka, and if it rains there, it rains here on the server within about 90 seconds. So the qualifying session is underway. It's a 20-minute session. We're only 3.5 minutes into it, so you haven't missed the action. Just wanted to give you all a very, very warm welcome. The car is a 2009 spec F1 car, so a naturally aspirated V8 revving to about 18,000 RPM. And without any of the overtaking aids such as KERS and DRS, which came in the 2010-2011 season. So we've got sort of good old-fashioned racing. You've got to find a way around the other driver, either on track or through strategy in the pit lane. We've got 2 tyre compounds, prime and option, and we do have the potential for a little bit of wet racing. So without any further ado, we'll start to have a look at the qualifying for you. Sander Callis was crowned the ACE champion 2 races ago. So he's had an incredibly dominant season, and no surprises there that Sander is on provisional pole, having recorded a 1:31.3. We think that lap times will start to fall, and we'll probably get quite close to the 1:30 mark as the drying line gets a little bit wider. Shortly, during the warm-up, I'll be welcoming to the commentary booth my fellow commentator Elise Skinner, and I'd just like to also thank on cameras and broadcast duties today we have Cameron Rodger, who's doubling up as race director as well. So they're the people looking after the stream for you today. So I'm just going to have a bit of a look here. Felix van Delft has set a personal best Sector 1, Sector 2. So I'm just going to see what Felix is doing, and Felix is just coming in now. Yes, Felix has just come in now, and provisionally on the second row of the grid with a 1:31.9. So he's found about 0.3 of a second last time around. Cheyenne Najam appears to be on an outlap. So we might just ride on board with Cheyenne for a moment, or in fact George Winter is further into his hot lap. Yeah, if that's okay, we're gonna run with George Winter. So George is approaching the final chicane, the Casio Casio triangle it's called. He'll try to get the car lined up and straight before absolutely giving it full beans to commence his opening lap. So George absolutely pinned to the throttle, 305, 6, 7, 8, 9, 310, 311 kilometres an hour as he turns into the first corner, and I was about to say he turns in as late as he dares because he wants to carry as much speed as possible, but unfortunately slightly misjudged there, and George has ended up running wide. It's tricky enough there on a dry lap, let alone one with a damp track. So we might run on board with Cheyenne Najam if that's okay, and Cheyenne just a little bit more cautious there into the entry. It's a judgment call, how much curb you want versus how much speed you want to run with, and he's entered the S-curbs now, absolutely beguiling section of the track. If you run a little bit wide in one of the earlier ones, you are going to be late for all the rest of them, but Cheyenne is keeping a very, very good line here. Into Dunlop, where you ease into a full throttle as soon as you dare to, and the Degner's, the first Degner, very quick, taken sometimes in 6th gear and down to 3rd gear for the second Degner. So Cheyenne is now coming up to the A-pin of, the hairpin, very, very slow first gear, and just once again got to be patient, bit of short shifting to minimise the wheel spin, and we'll get in a moment, we'll see what his first sector time is. It's not a PB for him, so he mustn't have quite executed that first sector as he wanted to. He looks pretty clean and pretty quick through Spoon. We'll get a second sector time for Cheyenne shortly, and now he's heading up to it's easy full throttle in these cars on this track. The 130R used to inspire fear amongst drivers, and Cheyenne is off. So Jared van der Weed is on personal best sector 1, sector 2, but actually he has completed his lap, so I'm just going to have a look at that. Okay, Sergei Eras now has gone a PB in sector 1, and it's a quick PB as well, so this could be a competitive lap. So Sergei now middle of Spoon, it's a double apex left-hander. It's got 2 separate turn numbers, turn 13 and 14, but it's effectively one turn with a bit of a squirt of throttle in the middle. So Sergei is pinned to the floor, doing 313 kph as he enters 130R. As the judge is braking just perfectly into the final chicane, the Casio triangle, not compromise his exit too much by running deep into the second last one, and it looks like a good exit onto the main straight, and that has put Sergei Eras provisionally onto the front row with just a gap of 0.2 seconds to Sander Callis. A great lap there from Sergei. Peter Schulze has now set 2 personal best laps, just a fraction off off Sergei, but Peter Schulze might provide us an entertaining run onto the pit straight. The final sector is a very short one, it's only 18.5 odd seconds, and Peter Schulze moves up into 5th place from 7th, so he's gained a couple of places there. Track is drying out as we speak, and Sander Callis, the already crowned champion of the ACE season, is just setting himself now up, about to start his hot lap. So we might ride on board with the 2017 title holder, and Sander gets the power down cleanly as he heads onto the pit straight, the main straight, and he'll be as brave as he dares into turn 1, doing 319 kph as he turns in, getting the car rotated nicely through turn 1, turn 2, and enters the S curves, and on a very, very nice line here. We'll know just at the exit of Dunlop or Degner 1 how his first sector's gone, but it's looking very, very strong at this stage. Good line through Dunlop. If you have a good entry into Dunlop, you can just pin the throttle a little bit earlier. And as Sander Callis rounds the second Degner, it's a purple sector, fastest sector of the session for Sander. Exiting the hairpin, little bit of wheel spin, promoting a tiny bit of steering correction as he exits the hairpin, and it's easily pinned full throttle as you go up through the gears, and then spot the turn-in point into the long spoon curve, and you certainly do not want to wander wide at any time here, especially damp on the outside of the track. So we'll get a readout for Sander Kallis' second sector time here any moment, and he's gone purple in sector 2 with a 39.993, so a very strong sector 2. It's going to get quite interesting because the track will continue to get faster, and the people who can just measure out how much risk for their reward will start to rapidly climb up. And that now takes us to a 1:30.8 from Sander Kallis. So he has taken a clean half a second off his previous best lap, and that is simply track evolution. So we've got a couple of drivers leaving the pits now, Christoph Schoer and Sergei Eras. Eras actually sitting second in the championship at the moment. So one of our top drivers, Catalonian driver. Prefers to be Catalonian than Spanish, like quite a few people at the moment. Viktor Ivanov has just done a personal best to move on to the third row with a 1:32.075. And Viktor has taken, a clean 0.6 of a second off his previous best time. So the track is getting faster all the time. We have 7 minutes and 44 seconds left of qualifying, and the track is getting quicker and quicker. And the drivers have just got to judge when to leave their final run. It would be wise, and my money says that we're going to see quite a bunch of cars leaving the pit lane with about 2.5 minutes to go to get the track at its absolute driest. Dewald Nell, South African driver, has just gone green with the personal best in Sector 1 with a 34.267. Might have a quick little look at Dewald. He's on the approach, it's called turn 12, but he's now on the approach to the spoon curve. Gets it turned in well, a little bit of understeer on turn in, and then a little bit of an oversteer when the throttle went back down. So, yeah, just struggling with setup balance there, I think. And Dewald is he's come unstuck on the back straight. 1.2 kilometre back straight here. So yeah, Ivan Leonov has just gone green, so personal best in Sector 1 and Sector 2, and that's promoted him to 6th place with a 1:32.056, and the track is just getting drier all the time. Might have a little look at Sergei Eras, who is, and Sergei has done a little bit like George. He just pushed that tiny bit too hard into turn 1, and the moment any part of the car is on that damp bit, it is game over. But Sergei, while he's sitting in P2, he's by no means safe, because the guys behind him have got another run, and they're going to find probably half a second just in track evolution. We might have a look with Felix van Delft. Felix is third in the championship as it sits at the moment, and he's going out now on what will probably will be his second last attempt. He's done 8 of 12, so this is his 9th one. He's hoping Dewald Nell will give him some room, and Dewald Nell moves very politely across to the outside of Dunlop and gives Felix the choice of the nice dry bit of track. And Felix has gone purple in Sector 1. Very strong Sector 1 from Felix. Felix is a quick guy from the Netherlands, and Felix has just made massive improvements in his pace over the last couple of seasons. I was having some great on-track battles with Felix, race-long battles with Felix a season ago in Pro, but he's absolutely left me in his dust now and found some massive pace. I joked with him that he might have stolen it from Jerome Quakel when he travelled to Jerome Quakel to interview him following his World Championship victory last year. So Felix, it's a PB in Sector 2, and it's also a strong Sector 2. It's quicker than Sergei's. Oh no. And he's come unstuck. So my eyes were off the screen when that was happening. I was looking at lap times, I'm afraid. George Winter has just done a PB for Sector 1, and it's a competitive PB as well. But back in the garage, it must have come unstuck. So George is now going out. This is a bit of a surprise. George is going out now with 4.5 minutes to go. He's only got, this is George's last go. So George is going to need to get these tyres in and get a clean lap in. It's a bit of an open goal at the moment because we have several drivers with backer grids and pit lane starts, and they are not allowed to qualify. So there's only 15 guys in quali. So big opportunity for a young man here. Jared van der Weed just gone a personal best for a 1:33.341. Cheyenne Najam has just done a personal best sector 1. George is on an out lap, so we might just look at Cheyenne's second half of his lap, if possible. He gets a good exit out of the hairpin. Throttle pinned to the floor as he negotiates the long curve of turn 12. Spots the entry into Spoon, and it's a bit of patience here. Waiting till the front end hooks up, a bit of counter steer, and that was judged pretty well. A little bit of throttle oversteer, but it's hard to avoid when you're giving it full commitment on exit of Spoon. And let's see what it looks like for him. His second half is not outstanding. It wasn't an outstanding second sector. It may move him. It's going to potentially move him up a couple of spots just based on track evolution. Let's see what happens as he crosses the line. And he remains in 5th place. So that second sector wasn't quite as strong as he wanted. Now, we were having a bit of a look before at George Winter. Now, George has just commenced now his hot lap. He decides discretion is the better part of valour into the turn 1, turn 2 double right-hander this time, and gets that done cleanly. And George looks like he's got it hooked up here now. He's pushing the car very, very hard. It looks like he's taken a little bit of wing, a little bit of front wing off for a really aggressive quali balance, which can work quite well for these guys. And let's see what and George's first sector is a quick time indeed. It's a very quick sector 1. In fact, it's probably 3rd fastest that we've seen today. So if George can hook this up for sector 2, he gets a good clean exit from the hairpin, gets the power down. Short shifting helps a lot. We've got 1:50 left in quali now. So we are really coming down to the wire. This is the money shot from George Winter. He'll be hoping to get up in the top 5 or 6, I would say, knowing George, and he'll be frustrated if he doesn't. George is one of the few drivers using Oculus Rift. He's driving in virtual reality, so totally immersed. And let's see what George Winter's second sector time looks like. We'll get that in a moment. A 40.4, that is quick. I think we'll possibly see George as high up as the second row if he can get a clean exit out of the final chicane, the Casio Triangle. And George hammers it down to the finish line now. And George moves up to 6. So that's a far more acceptable lap from George Winter. So well done to George. So just looking through the grid at the moment, it looks like Lucas Schmidt is about to start a hot lap. So we might ride on board with Lucas. Certainly one of the quickest drivers on the grid. He's had a 2nd place this season and 3 podiums. Swiss driver from Bern in Switzerland. So land of very accurate watches and very fine chocolates, amongst other many great qualities of the Swiss nation. But Lucas is really putting it in here through the S-curves. Just hooking it up to get it over for a good exit onto Dunlop. If you can get it to the right, you can pin the throttle earlier by having a faster line through Dunlop. And in a moment we'll get Lucas's first sector time. And he has gone purple. We get the timing point is just after Degner 2. And it's a purple sector with a 33.539. Great exit out of the hairpin. Okay, checkered flag is out now. Nobody else can start a hot lap. And Lucas Schmidt is certainly going to consolidate his front row with this performance. He gets a good strong exit out of Spoon. Little bit of correction as he gets the power down. And pinned to the floor as he heads up to 130R, which is an easy flat out left-hander. Car gets quite squashed here, so the drivers have got to look at third spring packers. Not an awesome sector 2. And Sergi Heras has just overtaken Lucas. and moved onto the front row. So great lap from Sergey. We missed that, but it was a nice on-board lap with Lucas, and he did go purple with Sector 1. Luke Maguire drops in with a 1:31.391 for P4. Second row for Lucas, for Luke, and Sander Callis has gone out at the very last moment to just put in an even stronger pole position lap time. Does he manage to do that? And he does. He just goes from a 1:30.884 to a 1:30.876, so takes 1/100th off his lap time. Felix van Delft has just crossed the line for 5th place, and Felix seems to be happy with that. Jared van der Weed is still out, and is it still a hot lap? No, it's not. He's just cruising back. I'm not quite sure what he's doing there. He must have just realised he'd missed the cut. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of an exciting, wet but drying qualifying. Hope you enjoyed the ride with us. And that is our top 3. Sander Callis, the already crowned ACE champion, Estonian driver driving for Netrex. And joining him on the front row, Sergey Eras from Catalonia. And the 3rd spot on the podium taken up by Lucas Schmidt, Swiss driver from Bern. So congratulations to those drivers on that performance. Only Sander making it into the 130s, but of course you've got to remember that it was a very narrow strip of dry track. So hopefully I'll have Elise Skinner will be joining me soon in commentary, so you guys don't get sick of me and I don't run out of things to talk about. But we'll use the warm-up session. For a little while there'll just be the opening screen here for you, but we will use the warm-up session to sort of bring you up to date with a few other things that are happening in the Formula SimRacing ACE Championship. So just a little bit more background for you on the driver title. We mentioned the opening segment here that Sander Callis from Estonia has taken the ACE Championship. Currently, Sergey Eras is sitting in 2nd place with 154 points. Sander Callis won last time out to consolidate his victory. He's 270 points. So Sergey Eras and Sander Callis did that by virtue of 9 wins. Bearing in mind we've had 13 races. Sander Callis has had 9 wins and been on the podium a total of 11 times out of 13 races. So absolutely stunning performance by Sander. And the way the system works is that the top 3 drivers at the end of the season are required to move up into the next level. So this being ACE, they will be required to move up into World Championship, where either their current team or a new team will certainly welcome them with open arms. Felix van Delft, the driver from the Netherlands, is in 3rd place on 130 points. So it's mathematically possible for Felix to actually catch Sergey Eras. And these guys, this battle is a bit closer than it might look based on points, because Felix has missed a couple of races. And between the two of them, Sergey has had 2 wins and been twice on the podium as well as that. Felix has had 1 win and 5 podiums, so very consistent performance. Christoph Schoer, Italian driver, is in 4th with 120 points. He's had 3 podiums and he's come 4th on 3 occasions as well, so a lot of depth to that performance. We've then got De Wold Nel from South Africa, 5th place, 118 points. Lucas Schmidt, who we mentioned earlier, watching quali, 109 points. Danny van den Neet, 7th on 101. Arif Roslan, driver from Malaysia, 8th with 58 points. George Winter from Germany, 56 points in 9th place. And Adam Maguire, who is in 10th with 53 points. Adam Maguire, I believe, has moved up into World Championship full-time. So that's a bit of what's going on. So a little bit of background information on the track and on strategy here.
Okay, right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, apologies. The server has crashed. So, the race director, Cameron Rodger, has to restart the server. So, Suzuka Circuit, one of everybody's all-time favourites. Fabulous motor racing track. The only figure of 8 that we see in the real world Formula 1 circuit and in the Formula Sim Racing circuit. And as a result, it's the only time over the whole season where you don't get uneven tyre wear laterally. So your left and right tyres both wear out at the same time. So that alone makes it an interesting event, not having to manage that. And Elise Skinner's going to let me know when she's on board.
Yep, I'm finally here.
Hi, Elise, welcome. Thanks for joining in commentary. I guess we'll have more to say once we're back on the server, once the server's fired up again. How are you today?
It's a bucket full of problems here today, I think, for everyone. And the server going down was probably the last thing that we needed to put us behind schedule, but hopefully everything's fixed up soon. Cameron, being as Philip a race director, is always managing to get everything fixed.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to go back in myself.
Yep, server is back up now, according to the server list.
Okay, fantastic.
This never happens in real life Formula 1, does it? You just get to the track and then suddenly connection lost.
Yeah, indeed. So before, also, this is a good moment to just let our viewers know that you can follow Formula Sim Racing on Twitter, and the Twitter address is below the location of the stream here. So please feel free to follow us on Twitter. During the course of the stream, we'll try to keep an eye on the in-stream chat, and if you do have any questions, if you use the hashtag AskFSR, we certainly don't know everything, but we'll do our best to answer any questions that you might have. And if you're a quick driver where you race, and be it on rFactor 2 or any of the sort of more simulation end of the games, or even on the more sort of simcade type stuff like the Cody's game, which is fantastic, and I certainly don't use the word simcade as any form of criticism. It's a ton of fun, and I'm really enjoying doing a career. I'm in second year of my career mode, driving the Haas, and it's a ton of fun, and all the great things that happen around the driving are awesome, like the career, the offers from other teams, developing the car, etc. But there is no comparison, there is no peer in terms of the actual driving when it comes to Formula Sim Racing and rFactor 2. The driving is key, and that's where it's absolutely unbelievable. So if you are interested, all you need is rFactor 2 and obviously a PC and a working wheel and pedals, and you can come along and get involved. We're getting close towards the end of this season, of course, but we do generally have a winter series, and that's a great time to get noticed, get on track and have a race with a few of the established guys, and it becomes pretty obvious who's got some pace. We strongly recommend trying to get a relationship going with an established team, because they're just going to help you so much get faster, whether it be through setups or advice. It's very hard to do it as as a Lone Ranger at this level. So, but if you perform in the Winter Series, there will be no shortage of teams that want to give you a bit of a helping hand. And the normal process is to get involved in Pro, and you'll soon end up where your pace means that you belong. So feel free to get involved. Come and join us at Formula Sim Racing, and we'd welcome you aboard.
I would actually also like to point out that the ACE division, which we are currently commentating on, has actually become also allowing privateer / independent entries until the end of the season. So if you're unable to find a drive in, say, Pro, and you're able to come on and come join us on the Saturday evening around the same time as always, then make sure you get signed up, get in the ACE series, and come join us as an independent, because if you can show your pace against guys here and beat these guys, you're definitely going to be sure of getting at least a Pro drive for the next season.
Yeah, absolutely good advice. I'm just going to have one more go at loading the track because I'm having an error here. I may need to reboot my computer. If so, I'll leave the stream in your capable hands for 2 or 3 minutes while I reboot everything. At least I'll let you know shortly.
Thank you very much, David. But as said, here at Suzuka, it's going to be a very interesting race. And obviously, no real road save at the moment, so it is dry here. So it's probably going to be, it's going to be a dry practice session. We'll be moving to warm up in about a minute and a half. So just give the weather plug-in time just to update itself, as the guys just re-joining the server. As we said, had a bit of a server issue, so that's all been restarted. All the guys are going to be coming in. The grid, as you saw it in qualifying, will be what it is for this race, alongside the penalties that we have today, and I'll read them out for you now, as David has had to leave me, so I'll come read out the penalties for you now. So, Arek Kulak has a back of the grid penalty alongside Arif Roslan, Danny Van Den Eet, and they are the guys who are going to be starting at the back of the grid. So they'll be starting on the grid, they just wouldn't have been allowed to set a time. Now we do have a couple of people starting from the pit lane, which means they aren't allowed to set laps and they're not going to be starting on the grid. They're going to be starting from the pit lane, will be allowed to leave the pits when every driver has passed the pit exit. And that will be Dmitry Zaharov, George Chantapantelis, Corey Jamnik, and Christopher Raby. Now pit lane starts are usually for late allocations, so that is the only reason they'll have a pit lane start, unless the penalty is deemed too weak, in which it will be upgraded. So welcome to Formula Sim Racing here at Japan, and hopefully you stick around with us for what is going to be a very, very interesting race. And cameras are now back here at Japan for the Formula Sim Racing Series ACE division. Thankfully, Cameron Rodger managed to get everything fixed for us, so we can now finally give you a bit of an update on everything that's going on. As you'll see, good for the drivers, just getting used to the heavier fuel. Everyone would have been qualifying on a light fuel load on the soft tyres, and now everyone's going to be getting on that heavy fuel load on whatever tyres they need it to be. So hopefully I can be joined again by David O'Reilly shortly. He's just rebooting his computer, as he said. But great to have you all with us here for the Japanese Grand Prix. Here. A few drivers asking a few questions to race director as well, who is also Cameron Rodger. So Cameron double dutying here, as he always does. As I say, it's a very interesting qualifying session indeed. Obviously, I was here watching it, just let David cover it as I was having a couple of connection issues. But great to see some of the guys, especially seeing Sander Callis taking that pole. But just seeing Cameron say use the same setup, a lot of trust. And I'm finally rejoined by David O'Reilly again. He's hopefully gotten everything fixed. How's it looking?
Yeah, hi, Elise. Yeah, just loading the track now. So I'm back in TeamSpeak, obviously, and now just about to go onto the server so I can help you. So yeah, apologies to the audience. We do have these technical hitches sometimes with our virtual world of racing, but rest assured we're going to have a fantastic race for you tonight. One of the things that's interesting, I think, Elise, I was doing a bit of testing this week because I'll be racing myself tomorrow in the pro event. What they call the prime offset. I think David Coulthard likes to call it the prime offset or the prime delta. Basically, how much slower the prime tyre is. It's significant here at Suzuka. Monza, it was tiny, maybe half a second slower than the option tyres, but here it's just so much more hard, sustained cornering. You know, when you look at the turn 1, the S curves, Dunlop, the lead up to Spoon itself, the tyres can only give so much, and of course the prime tyre is that bit harder and longer lasting, but it's slower, and it can be up to 1.2 seconds slower per lap at the beginning of the stint. But you know what, it starts to feel lovely late in the stint, because the option tyre, as we know, it starts to lose life pretty early, and whereas the prime, it just keeps on giving. So I won't be surprised if a couple of drivers don't decide to sort of make the prime sort of the main race tyre. But we'll see. I may be wrong, but it's certainly something I'm considering doing.
Yeah, I was about to say, back for, as you were saying, at Monza, it wasn't actually that big a delta loss, and obviously I did race in Ace Monza, and I'm sorry to everyone that had to see me race in Ace Monza. That was quite an entertaining race for myself, and we all laugh at it in hindsight, me and the guys who I talk with. But as you said, it was true there. The hard tyre didn't really live up that badly, so a lot of people picked it as the sustained race tyre because they knew they could just get away with it. So.
Yeah,
but,
no, exactly.
Over here, you are going to need to use that hard tyre for a bit longer just to get the worth out of it. But again, you are going to be losing a lot more time here. So just what you weigh up, your options you weigh up is going to be different. And it just depends to see who's going to be starting on what tyre. Because I think I'm seeing a couple of guys, maybe guys who are qualifying a bit further down the back, running this warm-up session on those hard tyres just to see what they're like. And still a couple of guys actually crashing going off here, and I think I saw one of the flag-to-flag cars off there. But as you see, just not everyone used to this circuit still, or just making small little mistakes here, which is obviously everyone does that, but it's a bit surprising at this late stage the weekend.
Yes, and also, and I think you probably mentioned it, with the server crash, unless you're Nostradamus and you can predict the future, the real road may not have been saved, and it's worth touching on that for a moment, and that's one of the amazing things about rFactor 2, and what real road is real road is the rubber that's left on the circuit. So instead of some sort of, let's say, canned track evolution in inverted commas, where the simulation decides that after X number of laps the grip improves by an amount of, you know, Y, the track actually gains rubber exactly where the cars drive and only where the cars drive. So if the drivers come out and it's green and there's no rubber on the track, it is a different animal. The grip changes enormously, the grip balance changes enormously too. So if we've got a bit less rubber on track, it's probably, I guess it's like in real life after a track gets rained on heavily, the track evolution is really not there.
Yeah, that is true indeed. It's just watching some guys practice the pit lane entries and pit lane exits. Just seeing a couple of them locking up coming into the pits. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you do, but I've just seen Schulze coming into the pit lane actually speeding, so he's just got himself a drive-through penalty for that, which is unlucky for him. But just shows that even here at the moment, he's just got to make sure that's the one thing that can easily cost you a race, is getting a penalty for just simple things like speeding. If you're not careful, you're going to get a penalty for that, and hopefully these guys realise that by the end of it. But as Cameron told me, the real road wasn't safe, so we lost the wet and we lost everything else. So, as you said, David, it's a completely different beast. So hopefully everyone's just going to rubber the track up now, and that's why we're running the full warm-up session just to answer a couple of questions on the stream. And
exactly, and you'll be seeing it as our producer is also, or our cameraman, producer, broadcaster is also the race director. So from time to time, he's got to do some pretty important work behind the scenes to get the grid in order. He's got to run some certain tools and also to brief the drivers and tell them what's going on, who's been a good boy and who's been a naughty boy. Worth perhaps mentioning, we've got some penalties here. We've got back a grid
mention them.
Oh, you have already?
Yeah, I did that before I did that just as the server came back. When you were gone.
Well
but
done.
No. See, we always plan ahead, David.
Very well done. So the drivers at the moment are literally just getting a bit of rubber on the track and getting used to the balance of the cars. It's a pretty cool night in downtown Suzuka at the moment. I'll just have a little look here. I think we're on about 19 degrees, 17 degrees ambient. So some of the drivers will have decided to take some risks with radiator size. One of the choices the race drivers have got to make is how low to go on radiator size. These cars, like most Formula cars, they don't have a radiator. They don't have a fan on the radiator. They're cooled only by air passing over the radiator. And the bigger the radiator, the more drag. And in fact, with rFactor 2 simulation, you get a little bit more lift as well from the bigger radiator. So the smaller you can run the radiator, the less wind resistance you've got and the faster the car's going to be. But the flip side is you can only run the car so hot. And once the car starts spending any time with an oil temperature of more than 120 degrees, it severely eats into the predicted life of the engine. And because ACE is full race distance, the programmed life of the car only probably gives them about 30 minutes of headroom. So if they're over revving and over temping the engine by just running too hot, engines can blow, and we've seen it a lot. And it tends to not be always on the hot days. It's sometimes on the cold days, and people decide to really push their luck.
Yeah, that is a true fact indeed. Everyone does like to push their luck, as you find. It's used in all forms of motorsport. Everyone just trying to find that balance between speed and reliability, and just a couple of guys just making their final reconnects. Everything. Cameron fixing the grid up as he needs to, but just seeing some guys set laps in as Alvarez sets a lap 17 seconds slower than Maguire. But yeah.
Yeah, at least looks like there's a little bit of rubber down now. What we tend to do in Formula Sim Racing, and Cameron Rodger's just giving his last minute instructions to the drivers. What we tend to do in Formula Sim Racing is we use what's called 25% real road to start with, which means the entire track surface has about 25% rubber impregnation, and what that prevents is a situation where you've got one rubbered line, and off that line it is just deadly, a little bit like our quali was. And the reason for that is, yeah, it's really authentic to have that, but in real life there's always a bit of grip there, and if it's totally green off the racing line, it's not conducive to overtaking. And we want to have races where people can challenge. I mean, a perfect example is into the hairpin here. If you decide to make a move down the left-hand side or defend down the left-hand side off the rubbered line, it is treacherous, so just because there is no rubber there.
Yep, and sorry, I was just keeping an eye on the stream chat and everything else, and just now Leonov has rejoined the server. Final grid edits can be made if needs be. Someone's having an accident in the pit lane, as I heard. Don't know if you heard that as well, David, but
yeah,
definitely heard some crashing on my
noises.
That's
and you know what's happening? It's raining.
Hello.
It is raining. We thought there was a chance of it. I'm going to update my weather to say exactly what's happening, and we said we had a chance of rain. I'm going to reload this page, but certainly the weather system, the weather station that the server is talking to is telling it that there is localized rain at the moment. So just another curveball to throw at the drivers. So now at this point in time they've chosen their setup, And what they've got to do is they've got to make some rapid changes to aero balance, because you get so much less grip in the rain, but of course the front wing creates so much grip, you get massive oversteer. And now we've moved into the race session, and unless I'm mistaken, it does appear that the track is dry, having made all those speeches about rain.
What it will do is it'll obviously take about 30-ish seconds to update itself, and maybe, or 90 seconds, I think, as you said, the weather plugin takes.
Yeah.
So some people might start on wets, as I can see one of the ACR cars in the pit lane on wet tyres, just waiting for it to see. And yes, it is raining.
It is
anyone who's on the
raining
grid now on the dry tyres has either made the best thing and a couple. Alvarez is going to miss the start.
These guys are all pretty experienced. What they can do and what they'll have to do is at any time on the formation lap, they can retire to the pits. And they've got, during the whole time of the formation lap, they can just go back into their pit box, change their tyres and drive out and start from pit lane, and that's exactly what they're going to have to do. So the guys have made the gamble. They're on full wets up the front, and this has absolutely thrown a massive variable, a lot of excitement into this race for us.
Right, so I'm actually just going to go down who is, if anyone is running. So Callas is on the wets, obviously, as you said, the whole top 10, I think you said. Actually, no, not the top 10. The top 5 are on the wets. Leonov is on the dry tyres, so he'll probably come in and pit for the wets as well.
Yeah.
Then everyone else down to, I think everyone else is down. Oh, Fernandez has got a penalty already, it seems. Kulak is on the dry tyres as well, so he's going to be taking a gamble. He might come in, but it's going to be interesting, as I think a couple of drivers, there's a couple of drivers are still in the garage, obviously just waiting.
Yeah, Leonov, as you said, he's on slicks, and wow, massive gamble, and his car it's not behaving catastrophically, but it is certainly not looking fun. So the drivers who are starting from pit lane now are making their way up to the red light. They'll be instructed when they can go by Cameron Rodger, and they don't leave on the green light. They leave when he says go, and that prevents a situation where the guys in the pit lane manage to filter out ahead of the tail enders on the grid. So Santa Callas now bringing them round to form up on the grid. 19 degrees and raining, but the sky is not looking so dark. So
yeah, and also just having a look in the pit still, Roslin is now only just coming out as well, but sorry. Oh, as Kulak's had an accident on the formation lap, he's bounced over the curb, he's lost his end plate. Thankfully he was coming in anyway. Yeah. But I think the track's already getting that wet that guys need to be on those wet tyres, as Kulak nearly locking up coming into the pit, so it's not really going well for the Invictus driver.
Unfortunately, he wasn't. It appears he wasn't aware that he could escape back into his pit garage at any time. So we're watching the start now. I'm just behind Felix van Delft and watching the start line, and shortly we will get the drivers that are on the grid. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights. Round 14 from Suzuka of the Formula SimRacing ACE Championship is away. Luke Maguire gets a good launch, pulling up almost alongside Sergei Eras. How much risk are they going to take through turn 1, turn 2? And it looks like they're taking it pretty easy. Oh no, we've had a bit of a spill. We had a bit of a spin, but corrected it from one of the front runners. And a large amount of our pack is away safely.
A couple of cars off already. Sorry.
Victor
Nell and Ivanov are off. So already
Nell has lost his rear wing.
Yeah, so that's one of the Deltec. Oh, you can get it back if you can get it back to the pits. I'll be very impressed with how
Ivanov's car looks.
Ivanov's car is fine. He's only just lost his front right end plate. The Wild Nell is already out for Deltec, but Netrex already having a horrible start to their Japanese Grand Prix here in Ace, as the tail enders of the field just leaving or coming up through the back of the field now. But as you say, Sander Callis already with about a 1.5 second gap over Lucas Schmidt at the moment. So these guys already just settling down into their pace. There's also just noticing Felix van Delft has dropped down to 5th at the moment. I wasn't sure actually if he started there, if he started higher up. You can correct me on that, David, if I'm wrong. But it looks like Luke Maguire now for Go Speed is going to have a very good go on the back of Sergi Harris. Is flag to flag if he can get the run down towards 130R. But Harris is trying to have a go at Schmidt as well, but I really wouldn't advise trying to go down the inside of 130R. It will not end well at all. But as I say that, Jörg Winter trying to have a go as well. As that is actually, I think that's actually Harris off.
Yes,
Harris is off.
Massive spin from Harris at 130R. And I guess we'll probably get to see that on the replay, but you don't have a small accident at 130R in the wet. So I'll see if I can go back and capture a bit of that.
But 2 cars out already on the first lap, obviously Dwal now and Leonov. Leonov didn't actually even take the start, so Sergi Harris now pits in from what is 11th in the race at the moment.
Okay, I'm just going back to have a quick little look at Sergi's issue so I can give you a bit more of a report on it. And he's very close behind Lucas Schmidt and gets just loses the rear end in 130R. Just a case of too much speed. Too much speed for those current conditions, I'm afraid. But yeah, as you said, Callis seems to be very, very confident in his wet setup, and he has half of the way through the second lap. He's now got a 2.5 second lead over Lucas Schmidt, Luke Maguire, Felix van Delft, Najam, Schoer, Winter, Schulze, and there's quite a tight little group there in front of Van der Weide of Schulze, Winter, Schoer. They're all in a pretty tight bunch, feeling their way around on this wet track. And Van der Weide then got a really, really loose rear end as he came around the Degners and had to do quite a lot of correction. So very, very challenging conditions at the moment for these drivers.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I've just looked at the replay. It was on the stream. Thank you, Cameron, for showing that. And that was the action between De Waal and Nel. I didn't know if you were just commenting on that, but it looked like De Waal and Ivanov just came together. It was just complete two-way accident between the two guys, and it was just both of them didn't leave each other enough space and just took each other off. And De Waal now coming off the worst of the two guys on that. So that's what has caused Walden now to come out of this race on the first lap.
Very, very tricky in these cars. Of course, your peripheral vision is not good, and unless you've got triple screens or you've got virtual reality headset like an Oculus Rift or something, you just can't look to your right or look to your left and see who's there. But I tell you what's fantastic though, this Crew Chief software. It's a free plug-in, and with Crew Chief, he will give you updates. It'll be, car on the inside, car on the outside, hold your line.
Oh, Jörg Winter's out. Jörg Winter's out. What's happened to Winter? Let me have a look. Could that have just been a simple disconnect? No, he had a pretty big accident and he's just called it a day. He slid off in the S's and then called it a day from there. What
a shame. It is such a game of patience. Driving these cars in the wet weather. And for the benefit of our viewers, the ACE and the World Championship drivers have to contend with wet weather. Yeah, I can see the winter. I've just seen on the stream there the winter issue, and it was just throttle oversteer. The World Championship and ACE drivers have got to be able to contend with wet weather. But of course, in Pro we have real world temperatures, but we don't have rain, so it's just adds another dimension. It adds another massive challenge for these drivers to cope with wet. I mentioned earlier, typically they'll take some front wing off or add some rear wing. If it happens like it did today after quali, they've got parc ferme, so they can't touch the rear wing. They can take wing off the front. They can move brake pressure, brake balance, and they can change the steering lock. But what they can't do, they can't add diff lock in parc ferme. So George Winter probably had a lovely dry setup, and it looked to me like it would have been, he would have benefited greatly from a little bit more diff lock on the power side there, because that is a massive asset in the wet, just to tame the rear end of the car.
I'd just like to point out a nice little fight going for 11th between about 4 cars at the moment. One of our privateers, Jesus, Alvarez, nearly having a look on the inside of Fernandez there, getting a bit sideways. That's 2 Invictus cars. I'm not sure who Zahara is for. I'm not sure if he's one of our independents. But yeah. Fernandez, definitely one of our independent drivers here in this series. So he's one of those guys that decided to come join us as the opportunity arose. And he's showing that he's able to defend from these guys who are, let's say, they are experienced in this series. You think they are driving for one of the official teams. This is Invictus, so these guys are official drivers and are very experienced. And then you've got one of the independents coming in and just proving these guys completely just useless at the moment. But obviously, it is wet. It is a lot.
Well, if you can, I mean, if you can turn up here and if you can lap in the wet and not be at the back, that in itself is a pretty good sign. And it might mean that Mr. Fernandez won't be in a plain white car for all that much longer. It's sort of begging. It's the sort of car that says space for rent, in his plain white livery. So Callis has now pulled 5.6 second lead. I'll have a bit of a look for some stats here in race view. Yeah, Callis, his last lap with his best lap with a 1:45.6. That's 13 seconds slower than dry pace, and 13 seconds is a long time in a lap, and that's 13 seconds of extra caution, extra angst, extra correction.
Ivanov is out as well. I didn't know if you saw why he's retired. I'll have a look back.
Okay.
But whether he's just called it a day with his damage or not is another question. But I have a feeling that with the way this weather has been going, that it would be an accident, and I have that feeling because the last point I've just seen him was at 130R.
We've had quite a lot of wet weather this season. Real world weather, including rain, was an innovation that was introduced last season in Formula Sim Racing because it had been available for about 12 months in rFactor 2. Well, Peter Schultz has just had a big off between Degner 1 and Degner 2. He kept the car straight but lost a lot of time to Chris Raby. We may even want to catch that on replay if we can, because Raby has managed to slip under Peter Schultz for no reason other than Peter Schultz just ran a bit wide there. Degner 1, of course, is such a quick corner. I mean, in the dry, you're just downshifting into 6th from probably 300 kph or 290 kph there. And so it's probably a 260 kph corner. It's a quick corner requiring a lot of commitment. So in the wet, absolutely treacherous, Peter Schultz just ran that little bit wide.
So Ivan, according to the Invictus team bot Maths Tucson, Ivan Leonov fell victim to a game bug. And also, that's an accident now. Alvarez has hit the back of Fernandez. Oh, and that's even more of an accident. I think that was Zaharov has come together with Roslan. Oh, that's a bit of a... that's a clumsy spoon. I might
go back and have a little look at the Roslan one.
I'm having a look at that now. So Alvarez hits the back of Fernandez, and then Zaharov just hits the back of Roslan, who slammed his brakes on, and that is Roslan out as well of this race because he had no rear wing. There's just a lot of these guys in the wet just struggling here with their setups and just struggling to get the car on the track. As I see Jared van der Veide almost spinning the car coming out of turn 2. But
very, very, very tough conditions, and you know, this is the sort of day where if you can keep it on the black stuff, and I'm just dropped down to have a look at Irek Kulak, who was running last, but he's not now because Dmitry Zarov looks like he's going to attempt to have his vehicle repaired. Kulak in 14th is a minute back, but he's still on the lead lap. His car's in a four-wheel drift in turn 1, turn 2, but relatively symmetrical, so not oversteer, not understeer. Just
and I've just been told that Luke McGuire has spun out somewhere as well. Thank you, Cameron, for
he got back on.
I was saying, Cameron told me, he just gave us, Cameron being the loving little director in my ear, just telling me everything that's going on. So
I think I saw that. Yeah, that was in turn 1, between turn 1 and turn 2, and so he recovered to the track. So good on him. So he's in 4th, but it's a day where you've just got to keep it on the black stuff, and you will earn some points because in ACE Sunlight World Championship, top 15 all score points. Oh, we've had another moment. So I was just catching something on the stream there. There was a big loss after the second Degner. Cameron's catching more action than we're calling at the moment, so our broadcaster doing a fantastic job here. So Schmidt holding station, 8 seconds to the rear of Callis, and if it was dry weather you'd call it a lonely race, but when you're out there with the rain you're certainly feeling far from lonely and far from relaxed, because these cars are an absolute challenge to drive. Don't hesitate if anybody wants to ask any questions on Ask FSR. We'll try to keep a bit of an eye on the stream. Lap time wise, they're sitting pretty consistently, the leader certainly in the mid 145s, and Lucas Schmidt in second is sort of in the high 146s. Van Delft in third in the low
5th, 7th and 8th. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's Chris Raby, and first is Peter Schultz. Raby's just gone down inside at Dunlop. That's a brave move, even if Schultz was giving a bit of room as Raby's drifting it through the second Degner there. So these two guys maybe just going at it, or whether that was a choreographed move by Abercrombie Racing. Those two guys from the same team, remember, both from Abercrombie Racing, maybe from different branches of the Abercrombie Racing team.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any team orders or any choreography, because Raby just got Schultz 2 laps ago.
As Alvarez is trying to have a go at Chantapantalis through the hairpin, trying to do a move. Kobayashi is Chantapantalis getting a bit sideways there.
He did, yeah.
Side by side.
Indeed, he did. Chantapantalis looks like he's got really a bit of an oversteer he's set up. He's only got a blink and the car wants to oversteer, and he just couldn't get the throttle down on the exit of the hairpin, and that gave Alvarez the chance to out-drag him out of the hairpin. And I would not want to be driving this car of George Chantapantalis, because it is just looking a mega handful. So much steering action. I'm going to hold my breath as he goes through 130R, and yeah, he's having to correct the oversteer through 130R, which could never be fun. So Zarov has still got 4 wheels on his wagon and up racing again. We haven't seen it.
Maguire is closing in on Felix van Delft as well, so it's going to be flag to flag versus Go Speed soon, and actually it's going to be very soon, because Maguire getting a better... Oh, no, as I say that, he's lost it all on the exit of the second Degner. Getting very, very loose on the exit there. He takes a wider entry in, but that means he's going to understeer out. But if they make any mistakes, then Najam for flag to flag is going to be closing on those guys as well. So all this is just allowing Schmidt and Callas just to slowly gap these guys. And what these guys really need to be doing is just keeping their own and trying to keep that gap close. But Maguire getting a great run out of Spoon, so he's going to be on the run down towards 130R. Won't try and make the move into 130R, I can promise you that, because making a move through 130R in the dry is bad enough, as we'll all know, and trying to do it in the wet is even more deadly as he goes wide through 130R. Doesn't lose the car, thank God, but nearly loses it coming into the Casilla chicane there. So getting very lucky. That car looking about as horrible to drive as Chantapantalis' car. So I really wouldn't like to be driving that Go Speed either.
Oh, indeed. In Luke Maguire's profile in our system, he had a choice of drop down boxes to describe his driving style, and he chose the one called Full Risk. So that's what he's doing for us today. Well, Christoph Schoer has just run wide onto the grass in the second of the S curves, but no harm done. He's living to fight another lap. Schultz got the edge on Raby somehow, because Schultz is leading that little pair again. And
yeah,
you know what,
Raby's dropped quite far back. He's almost in the clutch of Van der Weide now. So
yeah,
that Deltec coming a bit more alive in this wet weather compared to the dry qualifying. So maybe Yared's a bit more experienced in the wet compared to the dry. I know they have probably been practicing for the VC recently in the wet at Fuji. So maybe these guys were just using that for a bit of extra practice before this weekend. Maybe knowing it was going to be a bit wet, and just getting a bit of extra practice, which is always helpful around here.
Well, you know what? I think the track's getting wetter, because just looking at the body language of the cars and looking at the lap times are going south, but they're going only ever so slightly, only by maybe half a second or so. But for example, Callis was into the mid 145s, is now into the low 146s. So, and he's not in traffic. He's going to be soon. He's coming up to lap Dmitry Zarov.
Oh, that's Maguire getting very sideways. He's actually having to come into the pit lane. Sorry to interrupt you there again, but Maguire nearly getting into the back of Felix van Delft through the final chicane, and then actually drifting it into the pit lane. Whether that was actually a scheduled stop or not, or whether he's taking the chance now to come in and do one, is another question, because he's stopping in his pit box now. That's an even more treacherous thing to try and do, stopping your pit box in the wet here at Japan, because it's bad enough trying to stop in the dry, let alone in the wet. But he's now away from his pit box. Don't spin the rears up, otherwise you're going to spin round. That has happened before. Don't actually think it hasn't. And he's going to rejoin behind Van der Weide, so he's going to rejoin in 9th place at the moment, meaning the battles that we did have now vanished.
Oh, and Luke Maguire's car is just looking even more tail happy. I mean, when he was in the pits there, he would have had the opportunity to take some front wing off, which is very easy to sit here and say, but when you've accidentally ended up in pit lane, it's probably a case of, oh my God, I'm going to stop in my pit box now, rather than, I wonder if I feel like dropping a couple of clicks off the front wing. Which reminds me of what happened to Michi Hoyer in Hungary. Michi Hoyer lost the podium because we had a burst of rain with about 3 or 4 laps to go, and the drivers had about a half a lap to decide if they were going to pit for wets or not, or inters. Michi pitted for inters, but didn't change his front wing, so he had a massively oversteery car once the wet weather kicked in.
I think Chanter Panzelis has got that set up at the moment, because that car has been drifting to the... Oh, he's nearly off again.
Yeah.
He is really struggling with that car. Sergio Heras has now gone through, the Catalan driver. But that... How are you driving that car?
Fun.
How? How have you not had a massive accident yet?
The only thing that could be worse than driving that car in that situation would be doing that knowing that you had a lovely wet setup, but you didn't load it because you didn't know it was going to be wet. So, yeah, I mean, incredibly oversteery. So, yeah, dropping some front wing, adding some diff lock on the power side, moving your brake balance, are all things that'll settle that down a bit, and
Schultz versus
probably
Raby
reducing
again,
your steering lock.
Raby's gotten past Schultz again, and now Schultz is very close to the back of Raby again. These two are going for turn 1. Oh, Raby getting a bit sideways, same with Schultz though.
They'll have a lot to talk about after the race.
Those two will definitely be having fun in their post-race debrief, but they've also still got to be careful, because they have got Jared van der Weide, actually not a couple of seconds behind them now. He's closing in on these two. And Raby's car looks very oversteery. I think they really are going to actually be thinking about coming in with how oversteery their cars are. I'm still surprised Chanter Panzelis hasn't come into the pit lane yet with that car, because that is absolutely deadly, as it looks like.
Now, Dmitry Zarov is going quick enough to catch and pass Kulak. Kulak's called it a day. I think he just figured out he'd had enough. The car wasn't handling well, and he actually just pulled to the side. I think it was just after 130R. I'm just going to go back and double check. Yeah, he just it was through the Casio triangle. He took the right-hander of the chicane. Big oversteer moment. Car just drifted wildly out of control. He drove onto the grass and said, you know what, I'm not enjoying this. My car's not set up correctly, or I'll do something else. So we've had one more retirement, Kulak, which puts Dmitry Zarov up into P14, and he's lapping at a reasonably consistent pace around the 149. So I'll have a look at Fernandez in front of him. Fernandez is a bit slower than Zarov. He's doing about 150 somethings. So Zarov's only about...
Oh, I've just heard crashing. I'm sorry to interrupt again. I just heard a bit of crashing there. I'm not sure where. I think that's actually all. I've just seen Alvarez with no front right end plate. Chanter Panzelis has got no front right end plate either, but he's about half a lap behind. Just going to have a look. I'm sorry to interrupt you. All I heard was a bit of an accident there.
Action takes precedent.
Yeah, so all I heard was an accident go on, and then absolutely nothing.
Well, Zarov is 14th place now. He's in a real... I can see somebody changing places with it. Schulzer and Raby again.
Oh, it's Najam, according to Cameron. Oh. Thank you again, Cameron. It was Najam that had the issue. So,
Now, Raby has put Van der Weed and Maguire and Alvarez between him and Schulze, so Schulze must have had a massive moment sometime. No, he's lap
Oh yes, the jam actually. Sorry, comes over the top of Dunlop, hits the inside barrier, and spins off into the outside, right by the lead JCB forklift by Marshall Post 12. So, so he's managed to get that car going again. Not too much damage by the looks of things. Just have a look at his car. Yeah, it lost a front left end plate there, so just losing that car a bit. But it's just saying
he might have done that deliberately to save a pit stop and reduce front wing a little bit. Not seriously, of course, but I mean,
I was hoping that was the serious comment. Now I was about to say, whatever you're smoking, I'd love a bit of it because
I mean, however you achieve it, a bit less front wing's a good thing in the wet. So Schmidt coming up now to lap Dmitry Zarahov. Schmidt is lapping in the 147.
No,
so
that
Zarahov
actually,
in the
no,
150s.
you're wrong there. No, I think Zarov actually is just unlapping himself from him because he was very close to him. He was very close to him. Oh no, sorry, that was Schmidt you were talking about. Sorry, I thought you meant Sander Callis for some reason.
Yeah, Schmidt.
But Zarov going off at the second deck.
So Zarov is very politely either intentionally or not moved off onto the gravel and just very slowly rejoining now after the second Degner. There's a bit of dry track there under the bridge, which can
a very small bit. So
just to make things a bit more confusing.
It might be worth that change to slick tyres for that little bit under the bridge there. I think, David.
Well, it would be. Fortunately for them, it's on a straight bit of track, because if it was on a curved bit of track, it would cause all manner of problems. So we might just have a quick run through the order. I mean, the viewers can see it, I'm sure, on the totem pole on the left-hand side of the stream. But Sander Callis, the championship winner for this year, is in the lead. He's now got an 18-second lead after 12 laps. And to Lucas Schmidt's credit, he's perhaps pegging back certainly the rate of advance Sander was making, because Sander had gone about 5 seconds ahead in the first 5 laps. So Felix van Delft in third, Christoph Schoer fourth, Cheyenne Najam in fifth, Chris Raby, after a pretty long fight with Peter Schulze, seems to have done well and moved up into sixth. Jared van der Weed in seventh place, 57 seconds back. Luke Maguire in eighth, driving one of the world's most oversteery cars in eighth place. Alvarez in ninth. Peter Schulze, whose car, it's been a bit wayward, but certainly it's not taking the intensity of intense oversteery work that some other drivers were having to do. Sergei Eras in 11th, so Sergei's certainly dropped back from his qualifying position. He wasn't a pit lane start, was he, Eras?
No, remember he did have to pit very early on because he made contact with someone.
Yes.
So he's actually doing a pretty decent recovery drive at the moment, passing the guys who were past him when he made his pit stop. So now up to 11th, so doing a very good job of that so far. Thankfully, on my loving little HUD I've got all the pit stops show up, how many they've done. Bit of a pain in other commentaries because when they do driver changes, I have no clue if they've pitted or not.
So Zarahov's still circulating, although having an occasional issue, and he's on a clean lap doing a high 149 or a low 150. So certainly he's going to stay in the event. Where's our closest battle?
Closest battle between
What's happened to
Alvarez and Schulze. Oh.
That looks to me like it was a disconnect. Schulze was warping through Degner 2. And
no, he's still going on my screen. Schulze is still going on my screen.
Oh,
so
okay.
It could just be a fair bit of lag. I was about to say I wasn't sure if I was the only one getting a bit of lag here and there, but no, I've just had a pretty bit. He's still going in 10th place at the moment, Schulze.
Good, okay, excellent. Last thing we need to do is start losing people. Now, as Callis lapped... Oh no, sorry, I was getting some weird... I'm getting some weird lag events here that are affecting what my...
Callis is about to lap the fight for... Well, it's about to lap 13th and 12th, and there's a lot of server lag apparently, according to Cameron. So anyone who is looking at the stream and wondering why everything's going wayward at the moment, is a lot of server lag. So that is what the cause at the moment. So hopefully that'll fix itself soon, but just bear with us whilst this little period is going on. And the ping comes down, we should be back to normal.
Yeah, and it hasn't suddenly turned into a Codemaster game where the cars just sort of warp all over the place. We've got a specific problem going on. In fact, it seems to have settled down a bit at my end.
Yeah, it's settled down on my end as well because it's main server lag. It will settle down on both ends at the same time. Zaharov gets out of the way of Shkoa, who goes through there.
Raby having some difficulties.
Chantapanchalis and Fernandez are going at it just in front of the leader at the moment. They're going through 1 and 2 and they're about to come up towards the S's. I just saw that as I was switching back to Sander Callas as the leader, and Chantapanchalis has actually made an overtake on someone as far as I'm aware. So
yeah, he has.
the ice tired car, according to Deucen, is actually running very well at the moment.
Yeah, got past Fernandez there, so that'll be a good feeling for him.
But they've now got to get out of the way of Sander Callas, who's closing in on the back of them. The Netrex very, very quick here at the moment. So Sander's gotten something right as there's more crashing going on ahead. I'm assuming that was for Chantapanchalis.
I can hear crashing noises.
I'm assuming that was for Chantapanchalis because I just heard that and then Chantapanchalis is losing it a bit sideways there. Both of them get out of the way. How is Chantapanchalis losing it on a straight? That is how bad his car is at the moment. It is just treacherous for him.
Looking like incredible.
Maguire is now fighting. Oh, that's side by side with Alvarez through the final chicane. They're still side by side now.
A little bit of wheel banging.
Van der Vaarde is in the pit lane for Deltec, so he's gone. Enough is enough. I need a setup change. And Alvarez to the outside, coming towards turn 1. That's move done. Maguire's going to slot back in, go a bit wide, and look for the run through the S's. Chantapanchalis is out. I'm just assuming that was for an accident because of how wayward that car was.
Yeah, well, you keep calling the action. I'll go back and have a look.
Nejam is in the pit lane as well. He's got no front wing, so that was more accidents for Nejam. So Nejam is having problems here. His shorts are now coming under pressure from Sergi Heras. All the fights coming on here in this little part, in the mid part of this.
Chantapanchalis lost it on turn 12, which is the high-speed approach to Spoon. So an unusual place to totally lose the car. But his car was certainly behaving in a very errant fashion, so we can certainly understand that happening. So Zarov now up to 13, having pitted for a pretty long pit stop on the opening lap. And he's not the only guy that's been lapped. There's 3 people that have been lapped. And in fact, Zaharov, yeah, he's quite a way back from Fernandez, but Fernandez is probably half a lap up the road.
Yeah, they're about, I think he's about a minute behind or something along those lines. As I'd like to actually bring your attention to Sergi Heras versus Peter Short. So they've got Luke Maguire a couple of seconds up the road from them, about 2.4 seconds up the road from them. Come through 130R. That is a fight that could be starting up very shortly, as that fight for 11th is still raging on between those 2 guys. But has anyone else decided to bail out and come to the pit lane?
And Alvarez not far ahead, so 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, all very close, in fact. We've got, in these conditions, we've only got 4 seconds of real estate separating P6 and P9, so 4 cars. So these guys are getting into it, getting a bit of a feel for it.
Alvarez getting a bit wide. Maguire getting a bit of a tank slapper there. Just looking at the chat, Chantapanchalis coming on to saying very difficult. He didn't expect rain. Expect the unexpected. This is FSR. Expect the unexpected. You never know what could happen here, and I think I found that out at Monza. But
yeah, I think in this situation, in the ACE situation, you've just got to have you've got to have a setup in the bank. Oh, Sander Callas is pitting. You've got to have a setup in the bank for wet. You know, I think if you're racing in ACE, you've just got to either have a proper wet setup for that track that you've tested, or failing that, at least know what your suite of changes are going to be. Are you going to take 5 clicks off the front wing?
Lucas Schmidt in from second as well, by the way. So the top 2 decided to come and get some new tyres and probably a bit of a setup change there.
So now we know how long wet tyres last anyway. So the guys need to be sitting there and just knowing what 3 or 4 tweaks they're going to make to front wing, to diff, to dampers, to steering lock, if they know it is going to be full on wet.
Also, sorry to interrupt you, Sergi Harris now down the inside of Peter Schulze. This is on the run down to 130R.
Big move.
Schulze, don't you dare, don't do it, don't do it. Oh, thank God he's backed out of that. That would have been absolute death if he'd tried to move there.
These guys are having some great racing.
I know, these guys are giving us some absolutely great racing at the moment. As Alvarez...
Will any of these boys pit?
Nope, none of them pit, so they all stay out. They're all happy with their setups at the moment. As Felix van Delft actually is currently out in 4th, so Schmidt has dropped to 4th at the moment. Whether he had an issue, because he was a fair couple of seconds up the road from those guys.
All of his lap times looked okay.
So maybe he was a lot closer than I thought he was. Yes, thank you, Cameron. We knew he pitted. Thank you, Cameron, for setting this the obvious on this occasion.
Yeah, well, Sander pitted and Schmidt pitted behind him.
No, that's a crash. That's Raby. Raby's in the barrier at Dunlop. He's out.
Ah, no.
That's another ACR car gone.
So let's have a... I'm going to have a look back. Oh, actually, our ever-alert broadcaster and race director, Cameron Rodger, has already shown you that on the stream, but just to educate myself... Yeah, the car drifting like a mad thing around Dunlop, and then suddenly the front hooked up a little bit more than the rears had hooked up, and that was it, game over, massive oversteer. And you've only got to have the smallest touch of the barriers and you've got suspension damage just like real life. So Peter Schulze will no longer be able to battle Christopher Raby.
Oh, Schur in from 3rd place, so he's gone, this is enough, I want in now. So that's one of the Go Speed cars coming in. Anyone else going to follow? No, Schmidt stays out. Obviously, he's made his pit stop. So,
and we are 18 laps into a 53-lap event. We are about just over 1/3 distance. It just seems we've had so much action. So Dmitry Zarov is about to go P12. Shkoa, leaving the pits as you mentioned.
And just a bit of a thing here. Just looking in the chat. Chad Spazlis said, took a risk, set the car for dry, didn't happen, game over. So just unlucky for George there. Just you set the car up wrong and it just all goes wrong in general when it gets wet. And that car did look very hard to drive. We've got to give you credit for making it as far into the race as you did, mate. It was very entertaining to watch you just trying to drive what was effectively a rally car around this circuit with about God knows how many extra horsepower in the back of that, in the rear wheels of that car. But
well, exactly.
Nejam, I think, is coming in this lap as well. Nope, he stays out. But I think he's got a penalty. Yes, Nejam has got a penalty. Showing on my screen is he's got a penalty. So that's very unlucky for the flag car there. I'm just looking up the order. Closest fight at the moment is Maguire versus Alvarez. Maguire has pitted. Alvarez has not, nor has Van Delft.
Well, and Eras is just off the back of them. We've got Eras, Maguire, Alvarez.
Fernandez is in. Van Delft stays out. So the 11th place driver currently in the pit lane.
Alvarez, the last time round, was the quickest of the 3, with Maguire and Eras doing fairly similar lap time. These guys.
Oh, and I'm just looking at chat. Christopher Raby, the driver who just crashed out, is going on about blue flags now. So maybe a couple of drivers are not obeying blue flags as well as they should have been, or just not getting out of the way to his liking and stuff going on.
Yeah, there's been a bit of spirited chat back in the pit lane from drivers that have finished. Not quite as spirited as it got between Eddie Irvine and Ayrton Senna in Irvine's debut event. Now somebody else has just pitted. That's Alvarez who's pulled into the pits. He was probably the fastest of that little pack of 3. So he's decided that his primes have had an option. Try again, third time lucky. That his full wet tyres have had enough. And yeah, he may indeed take the opportunity to just do a slight adjustment to front wing. I'll see what the weather's telling me. There's not much.
The jam. So 10th place is about to come under lapping as Sander Callis. Even Sander Callis is coming a bit undone in, nearly actually losing the rear end through 130R, but keeping it pretty straight. And Christopher Raby saying who didn't get out of the way, and poor Zaharov not having the best of days today. But sorry, I must say this, I'm just looking, guys, in the chat, can you please keep it to a civilised standard? We would like to have a very decent stream here. But yeah, Sander Callas now leading, as that's Najam off! Najam is off! Oh, is he going to just avoid the barrier there? That was very, very close as Felix van Delft comes into the pit lane from second as Najam spinning right off at the first corner. Oh, that was very, very close indeed for the flag breaker. Felix van Delft leaving his pit box. He's actually going to be, I think he's actually going to rejoin a bit closer to Schmidt than he was before before both of them made their pit stops. So,
yeah, maybe it's going to settle out. We needed to settle out into the time in the timings once they've finished a sector. Fernandez just leaving pit lane as well. And Zaharov circulating in 12th. He might end up in the top 10, having had an off on the first lap, but just by virtue of getting back out there and lapping consistently and keeping circulating.
As Peter Schutzer comes in now from 7th place, and Najam has had his penalty removed, so something went on there that he wasn't aware of. But yeah, Schutzer comes into the pit lane. So that's going to mean that Van der Weide and Alvarez go through. They've both made pit stops. So still in the pit lane, just waiting for those adjustments to be made. Interesting helmet on Schutzer's in Schutzer.
Oh, I haven't even looked at that.
I've only just noticed his helmet.
Oh, yeah.
If Cameron can get a shot of that, that's a very interesting helmet.
Yeah, that's a bit crazy.
It reminds me of the Will Barnes helmet. If you remember 2015, David, Will Barnes' helmet with the massive eyes on it.
Now Sander Callas has now a 32-second lead. He's just done a purple sector 3, but sector 3 is a very short sector, so that might have only been the blink. But no, Najam has just retired. Shayam is out. Najam is out. I'm just going to go back and have a look what happened. Looked like it was end of the pit straight. The main
Fernandez versus Zahara for what is now going to be P10. Suspension damage. Thank you, Cameron. As Zahara getting a bit sideways. Now this fight between Maguire and Heras, I think it is. Yep, is actually going to now going to get even closer because of the fact that, well, they've got to get past traffic. And Cameron, thank you for putting that glorious helmet on screen. As Sergio Heras comes into the pit lane, so making a second stop here, meaning that Maguire is free to run his own race now as he laps Dmitry Zaharov. Now will lap Fernandez shortly after. Fernandez going a bit wide. But this race is just turning out to be something of an attrition. It makes me feel like we were at Monaco.
Absolutely a war of attrition, and for any of our viewers that have not driven this car in the wet, stating the obvious, I know, but it is a real handful. And it's tough for these guys. I mean, if you're preparing for a dry weather race, you're probably going to have to perform at any decent level. You'd be needing to be doing 200 to 300 laps of practice. And that's for dry weather, and then say, well, look, we've had a contact between Fernandez and Maguire at the second Degner.
I'd say that was Maguire. That's on Maguire, I'd say. Or I'd say that was a racing incident either way, because just looking at that, yeah, Maguire just turned across Fernandez, thought he'd have a bit more room, so Maguire not. Well,
yeah, I'm just having a look at that. Yeah, Maguire dived down the outside. Fernandez appeared to move to the right. I don't really know why.
I think he was getting out of the way or just making sure that Maguire had enough room, I'd say. But I think it was just an accident that went on.
It was okay. It was a misunderstanding while being lapped. Now, that's a real shame, because what Fernandez did was make a big mistake, and that is you don't try to get out of someone's way in a braking zone. It is not clever, because a lot's going on in a braking zone. You've got no options. Everyone's on their limit, and you let them by an acceleration zone. So if you'd just driven around Degner 2 and just short shifted and lifted slightly and moved to the right on the exit of Degner 2, everything would have been fine. But braking zones and corner entries are very stressful, and people are busy enough managing the car rather than thinking, oh, what's this guy intending to do? And if you misjudge it as he did just then, you overshoot right into the racing line. So it's a lesson to learn, and you know, certainly Fernandez has driven a good race, but that's a lesson to learn about letting people through. Do it at the beginning of an acceleration zone rather than into a braking zone, because everything's compressing. It just does not work well.
Yeah, and Cameron blaming the blue flag itself, so... but no, so as we've got a bit of time, but as Harris and Alvarez are actually closing in on each other, I believe, just trying to find that fight himself. Yep, they're coming up through the S's. We can go through the order currently, which is Sander Callis leading by over half a minute over Lucas Schmidt, who is in second. Third place is Felix van Delft, who's 38 seconds behind the leader, so he's only 4.4 behind Lucas at the moment. Then fourth is Chris Schoer, who is about 56.5 seconds behind. Then it's Maguire, then Hiras, Alvarez, Van der Weide, Schutzer, Zaharov, and Fernandez. That's the drivers who are left running. Schutzer, Zaharov, and Fernandez are all a lap down, but all looking to be scoring points at the moment.
And in 4 more laps, we're going to be half distance. And we are down to 11 runners. Dmitry Zarahov, who, just to remind the viewers, on the opening lap had a collision and had to pit on the opening lap for repairs. He is now running in 10th place. So it certainly was worth staying out there. And the other guy that's had a pretty good recovery drive was Sergei Eras. Sergei's first lap time was 2 minutes and 5. His second lap time was 2 minutes 17. And from there, he's injected himself back into this race, and he's now running 6th. But P8, by my calculations, will be lapped fairly soon. Jared van der Weide. Yes, in fact, Callis can see him as they're exiting the Casio Triangle. Callis can see Jared van der Weide up ahead of him. And pretty soon, that'll be a lapping situation. Van der Weide is doing 150, 151 basically. And Sander Callis is doing a 146. Yeah, so there's 4 seconds lap time closure. The Sander will... 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Sander will be on him within the next lap.
Yeah, as I was about to say, I can see, just looking from the back of Van der Weide's car, I can see Sander, so that is getting very, very close indeed, as Van der Weide actually making a couple of mistakes, so he's still not comfortable with that car. To be fair, it's a hard enough car to drive quick in the dry, let alone in the wet, as you've said earlier, David. So the thing is with this car, as obviously as I have driven it and you've driven it as well, David, is even without a normal setup, it is an easy car to drive if you want to drive it the way a normal driver would drive it. So smooth throttle out the corners, smooth driving, you know, like the James May approach. But when you want to try and drive it like Jeremy Clarkson, just put your power down all the time, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of laps, and in the wet, it's just nearly unfathomable. Like I struggle driving it at Monza in the dry, let alone here in the wet. It's absolute torture. Yeah,
no, it's an interesting, and Callis and Van der Weide have picked the perfect spot, and there's a contrast for you. Van der Weide lifts ever so slightly on the back straight, and Sander Callis cruises by on full throttle with hundreds of metres of clear road ahead of him, and job done. Now, it's no one's fault if they find a lapping car approaching them in the middle of the Degners, but just, yeah, find a little straight bit on a corner exit to let them through. So that was a nice, safe thing. Yeah, with this car, you can get in this car and drive it and say, well, yeah, car's pretty easy to drive, and I'm not having any problem, and I'm going pretty quick. And then you'll get on the server with some quick guys and go, right, okay, well, I've got 5 seconds to find here. And it's not until you absolutely start to squeeze the limits out of it that you then start to discover what happens on the edge. And they're really quick guys in the dry. They're sliding the car quite a lot. It's really a lot of hot lapping going on.
Yeah, that is true, especially when I came, because obviously I found out about the season about Jacob Reed, who drove for Drillers in Pro at the start of the season, told me about it, and I said, oh, I might as well come and give it a go. Me and a couple of other guys, so me, Jacob, and Chris Williamson, all got together. We all went, right, let's go get some practice. And I judged my time to Jacob, who in his own right is a decently quick driver. He was midfield pace at Monza until he had his accident. So it was and I was about 4 seconds. I was about a couple of seconds off him, and I'm like, where the hell? And I was on the same setup. Where the hell am I going to find this time around this circuit without going off and having about 300 million accidents, which did happen during that race?
Yeah, indeed.
Everyone would have remembered.
Because we've got a couple of gaps here, we can touch on stuff like that, and with the benefit of working with a big team, you have some really good guys to work with, and one of the best and simplest ways to get yourself sorted out is to compare your lap to somebody else, a really top driver's lap. And there's a tool called Replay Office, which is a free download. It's available on the Studio 397 website, and with that you can do a video merge of your lap and that other guy's lap, and you can start it in sector 1, sector 2, sector 3, wherever you like, or do all three. And if you sit and study that for half an hour, and you might do a few laps just looking at line, and then you'll do a few laps looking at the braking point, then looking at how he's using his throttle, how he's using his brakes, is he braking regressively or not, what's he doing different to you, gear selection, etc., etc. And you can come out of that, and you can I've had situations where I've come out of that, and the next time I've sat down, I've found a second and a half, 1.8 seconds, just through learning what the quick dot guy's doing. You've obviously got to be using a relatively similar setup. Then you can... Oh,
sorry, Schko's off. Sorry.
Ooh, big time.
Yeah, and he's taken out the 100-meter board. He's taken out the 150-meter board as well. That's a penalty for taking out the braking board, sir.
That's going to be badly missed, that braking board into the Casio triangle. That's something. Let's see how Maguire gets on.
If someone takes out the 100 as well, that would be quite nice. But
well, Maguire managed to get round, but he's probably wondering who took it away. So I'm just going to watch Sergi Eras approaching the same braking point. The marker's there in the middle of the road. Has he worked it out? And yeah,
barely.
He's around safely. In fact, one great trick is to find a braking marker that can't be destroyed or moved. And
that's one of the ones also there on the catch fencing as well. I've just noticed looking, they have them on the side of the track and on the catch fencing. Yeah. So if you lose the one on the track, you've got the catch fencing to look at. Unless someone magically manages... Well, Jared's obviously looking at the one on the track because he's just gone straight on at the Casio Triangle chicane. So just look at these guys just trying to find their braking point now. That
Alvarez has just had a big lose. I think it's in turn 1. He's gone wide, but no damage to the car. He's back on the racing surface and away again. So this has been a very, very long challenge for these guys. I'll be interested to see what the race time is. It's probably going to be an hour and 45 minutes or an hour and 50 minutes by the time these guys finish. So the other thing you can do is you can, if you get the hang of working Motec, you can analyse and you can compare and contrast your lap with somebody else's lap using Motec, and they're ways and means of just finding some lap time and finding out what the quick guys are doing and how they're going quicker.
Or you could just come and join Avid Chronic Racing and have all of those in one, and then have a team of specialists behind you. That's what you could come and do. And yeah, I'm sure Jamin is happy he's with that team.
we did our practice race on Thursday night, and I think we had 12 drivers, which is great. You've got half a grid basically to run a full dress rehearsal, and that's sometimes more fun than the real race because you can turn the car on to invulnerable. And if somebody bumps into you, you don't get damaged and doesn't end your race. Whereas the real race, as I found in Singapore...
Sko is off again at the last chicane, according to Cameron. And let's see, he's missing a front left end plate. I'm just surprised people are running with wings still. Like, why if you want less wing, why not just take the whole thing off? Just take a Monza wing and put it on there. Just put a T-tray on there. It'll work about as well.
Now, it might be wishful thinking, but Van Delft is lapping just a little bit quicker than Lucas Schmidt at the moment. Van Delft.
I thought Van Delft was getting a bit closer now. Only 4 seconds between the two.
There's a half a second in it. I mean, Van Delft is doing well. It's like clockwork, mid 147. So Van Delft is really getting a good feel and a good rhythm. Schmidt is running high 147s into low to mid 148. So Van Delft's got nearly a second in hand at the moment on Schmidt. Now, whether Schmidt's just in a zone and just keeping it safe, but I think we might see Felix Van Delft mount a bit of a challenge pretty soon on Lucas Schmidt. I'll just reiterate something I said earlier in the stream. I mean, Felix was racing, he was racing with people like me in Pro last year, where we'd be competing to get into the top 10 or the top 7 or whatever. And now Felix is a front runner in ACE. He has just found another level, and I asked him in all seriousness, you know, what's he doing differently, because I wanted to know, but he didn't tell me much. In all honesty,
this is Felix we're on about. He doesn't say much anyway.
Yeah, he said I'm practicing more and I'm focusing a bit more on setup, and I was hoping for some silver bullet solution.
According to his team boss Cameron, he got abducted by aliens. He turned into an alien.
Well, he did go. He did travel. He lives in the Netherlands, so didn't have to travel too far. But Christoph Schauer in the pits, by the way. But Felix Van Delft did a fantastic interview with last year's world champion, Jeroen Kwakel. And if anybody hasn't seen that, I recommend you watch it. It was a very, very high quality interview that Felix did. And I said to Felix, I think he must have stolen some speed while he was there interviewing Jeroen Kwakel. But Jeroen's regrettably not with us this season in World Championship.
He's on iRacing, isn't he?
To do other things, yeah, in iRacing. But I don't think he's in the top level, is he? I think he's trying to working his way up.
Yeah, I think well, that's the thing. You go from what most of the guys do here is they come through the ladders of FSR and then go on to iRacing and go do their challenges, or they come from. Or they actually, what they do is they either stay on rFactor 2 and go over to VEC, which is what a couple of guys that I've known from World Championship have done, or they go off to iRacing and do.
The thing, I mean, I'm speaking a bit from ignorance because I've never ever driven iRacing, but I've read a lot of stuff comparing them all, and you know, my sort of ignorant synopsis is that they're both very good. They've, you know, iRacing has some things that are very good. rFactor 2 has some things that are very good, and the things that rFactor 2's got that are very good are of more interest to me, the physics and the tyre model and the weather, for example. But rFactor 2 costs you about 30 quid for life, and iRacing costs you about 30 quid a month. So, you know, I just look at it and just very simply think, well, if I can get a fantastic sim in rFactor 2, the same one that the Formula 1 teams use, why would I pay 10 times as much to go and drive something else? But you know, but the iRacing has got a very strong band of followers, but there's no way I'm going to bother with it.
Just don't say that publicly, otherwise you'll have a firing squad.
Yeah, no, I would never mention that in public, because I know there's a lot of passion from keen iRacing fans.
No, to be fair, if you lined up all of the iRacing and rFactor 2 fans in a line opposite each other, I think it would I think the line would have enough just to cause an all-right World War III.
And I think if you take the top 10 guys from iRacing and the top 10 guys from Formula SimRacing, you've got yourself 20 very, very good drivers. So
of course,
it's not to say one of them's a console arcade game and the other one's not. So I'm just noticing here that Sander Callis has lapped everybody up to including 6th place.
So yes, he's lapped up 6th place now.
But
actually, sorry, another thing I must bring up now is Lucas Schmidt is only 2.6 seconds ahead of Felix Van Delft.
Yeah, exactly what we were talking about a couple of laps ago. Van Delft is starting to pour the pressure on. And, you know, he's just driving so consistently. Van Delft is looking almost metronomic in his consistency. So Felix has found a setup that works.
Schauer's off again. He's in the barrier. That's
game over.
He's out. He's gone.
Game over.
He had a penalty as well, apparently. So, as Alvarez going a bit wide there. But another fight that is good about
Italian
to happen
driver,
is
4th in the standings now. His big challenges, one of his challenges is coming from Schmidt. Schmidt is 6th in the standings and is only 11 points behind Schauer. So, and Schmidt is P2 today, and P2 is worth, I think, 20 points. So Schmidt is going to immediately overhaul Christoph Schauer and move into 4th place. So far been a good day out for Schmidt. But Van Delft, that's the other interesting thing. Van Delft is still in a fight in this championship. It's mathematically possible for him to overhaul Sergi Eras. Eras has 154 points, Van Delft 130, so 24 points, less than one race. And including this result, we've got 3 left. So it's game on. If Van
Delft, it is still game on because Maguire's getting a bit sideways and Sergi Harris is very close to the back of him as they're coming towards the Degners. So that fight's going to be getting even closer. So Felix Van Delft is going to want to get past Schmidt because he wants those points, and Sergi Harris is going to want to get past Maguire because he wants those points. So it's 6/10 between Maguire and Harris now. So as that comes towards the hairpin, Maguire's wide. Oh, here we go. Down the inside, Harris side by side as they come out. Flag to flag versus go speed.
Now, I was going to say, if it's a question of who's going to get better drive out of a corner, I think setup-wise, my money's on Eras because Maguire's car, it just is so twitchy on throttle. But he's actually, having said that, he's getting a lovely drive out of Spoon. So well done to Maguire, because that is so critical in this fight. Getting that drive out of Spoon onto, it's a 1.2 kilometre back straight. Now I don't know if that includes the 130R or not. So yeah, big battle between these guys. Van Delft and Schmidt, it's a bit stalemate-ish. Oh well, no, it's still around 2.5 second mark. And these guys are not in sister teams, so Felix Van Delft is going to give it everything. Lucas Schmidt, avid, very strong driver, avid chronic driver. He came to the attention of the team in the winter series before last. Now, I'll mention that to anybody who's interested in getting involved in Formula Sim racing, and I know I mentioned it earlier in the stream. The winter series is a fantastic way to dip your toe in the water, find out if it's for you, find out if you're quick, and if you are, it's a great place to show what you've got. And Schmidt, pushed it to the limit then, 130R. Schmidt, yeah, I think he's trying to keep this gap to Van Delft because Schmidt had the outside half of his right-hand tyres on the outside curb then at 130R. Didn't cause him any problems. So he's certainly not holding back, and we are at, the gap is less than 2 seconds now, 1.8 seconds. And we've still got, 21 laps to go.
Maguire versus Harris is still going. It's sort of he's doing an accordion at the moment, but Maguire just loses so much time through the hairpin but gets the run out, and then as they come down towards Spoon, Harris just closes up so much. So the problem is, wherever Maguire's quicker, Harris isn't, and wherever Harris is quicker, Maguire isn't. So it sort of accordions itself out in the end. But as they're coming down the back straight towards 130R, the run is all in favour of Sergi Harris. As they come through 130R,
Maguire had a bit of a tank slapper.
That car getting very twitchy, and you can see he's sliding it into the corner, so he's still driving it like it's a dry track. And he's still staying out as well, so this could be game on down the front stretch.
Yeah, Maguire
goes very defensive,
moving left and right to stay in the slipstream, and use Maguire's slipstream or dirty air. It's the same thing really. Just means you haven't got that block of heavy air in front of you. Or Harris is looking like a man on
They've
the
got the leader behind them. That's Sander Callis behind them.
Well,
hello. This is
what I'll be saying.
They will not want to move out of his way at all, but they've got to.
Well, he's got a 40-second lead. You know, he's not in a fight.
He's just going to casually rock up to the back, go,
yeah.
"Excuse me, gentlemen, could you please mind out of the way and move?" And they're they're just literally going to stick up a middle finger to him whilst they fight each other.
Or will Harris do what Verstappen did in Monaco and just tuck in behind Callis and follow him past Maguire? Or
Harris lets him through, so he's going to do a Monaco.
So Sergi needs to get on Callis's gearbox now and say, "See you, Mr. Maguire. I'm just following this guy." Can he do it?
That's as long as he gets the tracks out of the corner, because Callis gets such a nice drive out of the corners at the moment. That's why he's got such a nice lead at the moment. It's because the car is driving to absolute perfection, and Maguire is not going to want to get out of the way. He's going to go wide.
And it's costing him. Harris has got a slight lead. He did it. He did that. Awesome work. That slight hesitation from Maguire.
Still sliding as well.
Letting the leader through. And Harris only needed half an opening And Maguire's got a quick car.
Don't try it there. Don't try it there, Maguire.
That was a cunning.
He's going to go to the outside of the Cassius triangle.
Heras has parked it on the apex and invited him round the outside and said, if you can do that, you're a better man than me, Gunga Din. And Maguire has lost that position to Heras, but what a fantastic fight that was.
Yeah, it's that fight also. Now that fight for second place is now in traffic. They're behind Jared van der Weide. So that's now closing up a small bit again. It's 1.7 at the moment. So van der Weide gets out of the way of Schmidt pretty easily. He's going to back off and let Felix van Delft through. So game is going to be still the same as it was before the traffic.
And there's going to be another pit stop involved as well, because the guys all pitted between, or most of them between lap 18 and lap 20. So they're 13 to 15 laps into this full wet tyre stint. Is this? I've got a feeling this might be the first full-length wet race we've had. I think the rest of them it's dried up, or I may be wrong. But anyway, wow, it is not torture, but what a challenge for these guys. They're going to be sweaty. They're going to be exhausted. They're going to be so focused at the end of this race, and so exhausted.
And the girlfriends are going to go, what have you been doing all evening to make yourself so sweaty and focused?
Yeah, it is sometimes hard to explain to other people in your life how important sim racing is. I'm very fortunate. I've got a very understanding wife. She figures that at least she knows where I am.
At least she knows where you are of an evening.
Yeah. Now, so Callis has lapped everybody up to and including P4, which is pretty amazing. So we've got the top three guys on almost the same sector, and then we've got a gap of a lap really to 4th, 5th, 6th. And I know I keep referring back to it, but you know, I take my hat off to Dmitry Zarahov. Callis pitting, by the way, so exactly the same stint length as last time round.
He's got nothing to lose, so he's just happy.
He's divided the race length into 3 equal parts. Why race on tyres that have done more laps than you need to? Maguire's followed him in. Is Maguire going to take a click off the front wing and say, right, I'm going to come out now with a bit less oversteer and go for this bloke? So
Zaharov in as well from 9th. And Felix van Delft now very close to the back of Schmidt, actually. That's closed up a lot in just this one lap alone. Went down to 1.1 by the hairpin. Are either of them coming in? No, so both of them are going to stay out.
I was almost thinking if you're a Lucas Schmidt, you might like the pit just to take a bit of pressure off for a few minutes, at least for an outlap. Now, Zaharov might have been clever then with his pit stop timing, because he didn't have to yield to anybody who was ahead of him. Although Fernandez is now, this is a race for position for P9 between Ivan Fernandez and Dmitry Zaharov. Of course, I think that means that. No, I'm sorry, I've got this totally wrong. I was looking at Van der Weide, thinking he was racing Zaharov, and thinking it was Fernandez, so I apologise for that.
No, Fernandez is just ahead of Lucas Schmidt, and Zaharov is just behind Van der Weide. So, yeah. So there's still a fair gap. There's still a fair gap between those two guys. There's Schmidt, yes, I noticed that as well.
Yeah, Schmidt really seemed to hesitate into Degner 2 there. The other guy that never seemed to nail Degner 2 was Chris Raby in the. And I know it was a short race tonight from Chris, but he just never seemed to quite nail the second Degner.
Now I'm just looking at the lines these guys are taking, so I'm just keeping an eye on the Felix van Delft and the Lucas Schmidt battle. Schmidt goes a lot wider into that hairpin, keeps that wider line on the exit and gets a lot better of a drive. So whether Felix is looking at that now, just going, I should take that line maybe.
Yeah.
And
because
get any extra time
thing
he can.
That we don't have in rFactor 2 is we don't have effectively what people would call the wet line or the karting wet line, because of course on a real racetrack where all the rubber gets hammered into the little gaps, it gets when it gets rained on, all that rubber and a little bit of oil and everything becomes incredibly slick, and it's the bits off the traditional racing line that offer more grip in wet conditions. Well, we don't have that in rFactor 2. That's not implemented. So what's known as the racing line or the rubbered line is still the quicker line in the wet. I remember being incredibly impressed when Daniel Ricciardo in the Toro Rosso used that to great effect against a teammate in Malaysia, the karting line. Van der Weide is pitting. Just going to update the weather map and see if there's any changes. Still raining.
Looks like it. Well, just saying on my screen, there's not many raindrops, but that's probably because I'm going towards it at the moment. So,
yeah.
Still raining, but it looks to have eased off slightly. So, it could just slowly be starting to ease up. So, whether it, well, it won't dry up, but whether a dry line does start to form towards the end of this race or not, it's another question. It's not out of the question because this is Japan and weather is very well known for being quite wacky and crazy here, as we found out many years in experience.
Yep. Well,
yeah.
It's predicting. Yeah, the prediction at the moment is showers, rain, light rain. I think it's highly unlikely we're going to get a dry track now. So Van Delft on Schmidt, still close but no cigar. And these guys, they've not pitted yet, have they, Lise? So who's going to pit first out of these guys? Are they going to get quicker lap times once they've pitted? Are the fresh wets much better than worn but hot wets? Let's see. Looking at them both now as they exit the Casio triangle. Schmidt is moving to the pit lane. Van Delft is not. Van Delft is going round again. So here's Van Delft's attempt to put in a really good lap. Schmidt will be wanting to have an absolutely perfect pit stop, perfectly choreographed. Yeah, he stops on his mark. Should be about 6 seconds. And yep, so Schmidt gets a good pit stop. Van Delft will be pushing as hard as he dares on this in-lap, because the difference between his in-lap and Schmidt's out-lap is going to be the difference between where they're positioned. Van Delft is really pushing. He got a couple of oversteer moments through the Dunlop. Nice and tidy through Degner 1, Degner 2. And he's got clean air. He's been dealing with a bit of dirty air for the last couple of laps with from Schmidt's car in front of him. Nicely through the hairpin. Good drive of the hairpin.
From 4th place, so he's making his 3rd stop of the race. Obviously, 2 of them are scheduled, 1 of them isn't. But yep, he coming in now from 4th place. Alvarez has just been lapped by Sander Callas, and Sander Callas is about to lap Sergi Heras in a very short moment.
I'm going to look at sector times between Van Delft and Schmidt.
Oh, Maguire's got a penalty, it looks like. Well, it's showing on my screen he's got a penalty. Whether he has legitimately got one or not is another question, but
I've got Van Delft sector time for sector 2, 46.5. Let's see what Lucas Schmidt's, because his first sector is polluted by the pit stop. I'm going to see what Lucas Schmidt's sector 2 time is, and that's going to tell a story. I know 46.158 was Van Delft. Schmidt was a 47. Oh, Van Delft has got him by 0.85 of a second on that lap alone. Schmidt is going to need a really tidy exit. He's exiting the Casio triangle now. Van Delft, this is a big one. Big race is on. Van Delft is still on the pit limiter, but exiting the pit lane. Schmidt is just at the start of the pit lane, but flat out. This is I think Van Delft's got him. Van Delft's got him. Wow, what a move.
Well done, Felix.
Beautiful strategic call by Van Delft and a beautiful in-lap. He only had 0.85 in hand, but he made that work. Wow, that was that's as exciting as it gets.
On between these two for the rest of the race then. As Fernandez is off, he's going to get out of the way, thank the Lord, getting out of the way. They've got Demetrius Zaharov to lap next, and Maguire's actually got a drive-through penalty, according to my screen, so that's a shame for the Gosby car, running in 6th at the moment. His race has just been going downhill ever since the start, which is such a shame for him. He's been running such a good race, but the fight for 2nd is going to be going on all race now, because these guys are on fresh rubber, fresh setup, well, fresh wing setup anyway, and these guys are going to be going to the end. So what will these guys be doing?
Well, these points are so valuable for Van Delft. Just mentioning the gap between him and Heras is 24 points. He's going to close that up quite a bit. Well, not a huge amount. He's going to close it up by probably 8 points. if they finished where they stand now. He's got Schmidt between himself and Eras, so he'll close that gap up to a little bit more manageable gap. And I mean, bragging rights, second place in this season versus third. I mean, it's nice to have a P2. Interestingly enough, Sander Callis, who has been a fantastic driver this season in ACE, and nothing different about tonight, he's leading by 51 seconds. Sander Callis was the runner-up in Pro 2 years ago, 2015, and he was runner-up to the guy who won the World Championship season on debut, Jerome Quakel. Quakel won Pro in 2015, didn't bother with the normal process of getting into ACE and working his way up. He figured he had the pace, so he went straight into World Championship and won that. So it was only a World Champion driver that stopped Sander Callis from winning Pro in 2015. So second in Pro in 2015, won ACE in 2017. So Callis has now just got to work his way to the top of World Championship and to have a virtual complete set. Peter Briac, I think, is the only guy I know who's got the complete set. He's won Pro, won ACE, and won the World Championship. So he's got every trophy.
Wow, that's impressive. And just showing that, and Maguire actually asking for his penalty to be removed. Whether Cameron does that or not is another question. But as I guess Cameron in amongst doing the duties for now. Sander Callis has just gone purple in all three sectors for a 147.115. Maguire in. So Maguire serving his penalty then. So he hasn't had his penalty served. He has now 0 laps to do it as he's serving it. But that's going to really hurt the Go Speed drivers' race. Now
Lucas Schmidt, by the way, is still sitting within a second or so.
He's 1.4 behind.
Yeah,
so
1.4 behind Van Delft.
But I think that's going to get a bit bigger coming across the line. I think Felix has gotten the grips of the wet weather now. So let's see when he comes across the line. Yep, 2.1. So that gap is coming out. So
yeah.
It's not looking too good for Lucas Schmidt right now.
Well, Van Delft has really been looking planted for this whole, for the last 20 laps or so. He was absolutely metronomic when we saw him start to encroach upon that gap to Lucas Schmidt. Van Delft was looking absolutely metronomic, not overdriving, just taking half a second out of him or 0.8 of a second every lap, and then got close enough to do what we call the overcut. Now, the undercut is when you decide to dive in first and have a magical outlap. And the overcut is where you figure, well, actually, I'm on low fuel, I can go quicker than this bloke if I stay out for another lap. And that's exactly what Van Delft did. And this season, with this car, the overcut tends to be more effective because an overcut, by its very nature, means you're running on low fuel. You're about to pit, your tanks are nearly empty. Whereas an undercut, you're going in, you're getting fresh rubber, which is lovely, but you're also getting a tank full of fuel, which is very heavy. Fernando Alvarez has just done a purple Sector 1.
Ooh.
Now, is this people who've put fresh rubber on, or is it drying? It's probably just fresh rubber.
Yeah, I was about to say fresh rubber. It doesn't. Yeah. The rain is not easing up at all. But as you were saying, the overcut usually works in races where it's the Formula races where you have refueling because you don't fill the tank up full, so you don't. So you run to a certain limit and then you're on lighter fuel. The undercut usually works on races where fuel isn't really an issue. And rain apparently is at 52% intensity, so about half intensity at the moment. So let's see how this goes.
So we've got a few fans here in chat. Somebody just saying they love watching Sander Callis because no matter what, he always gives everything to win. And I think never a truer word's been spoken. He won the championship 2 races ago, and he's out here absolutely performing at his limit. And if memory serves me correctly, and I can easily look this up, I think Sander Callis came 5th last week in Singapore in World Championship. So he's really
he's already material for World Championship then.
Sorry?
I said he's already World Championship material then.
Well, absolutely. I mean, anybody who can run top 5, and I'm just going to look it up now. quickly.
Why is no one hired him already?
In the G? Oh, he would have been hired. Yeah, 10 points. I think that's P5. So Sander Callis came 5th in the World Championship event a week ago. So, but he's back here in Ace and wanting to absolutely dominate. And this would be his 10th win out of 14 events. And in the other 2, he podiumed. So 12 podiums in 14 events. Absolutely stunning performance. And that's why the rules are set, though, that the top 3 have got to move up, because, you know, we want the fastest guys in the top league, and if you are absolutely smashing it in Pro or Ace, then it's better that you go up and race the quickest guys to give everyone else a chance to win. But, you know, the other side of the coin is every time you turn up in Pro or in Ace, there are going to be World Championship pace guys on track with you, because to win in Pro or to win in Ace, you've basically got World Championship pace. So no matter where you are, you can compare yourself to the quickest guys in the world. And my feeling has always been that the top 2 or 3 guys in Pro are as quick as World Championship. The top 5 or 6 guys in Ace are as quick as World Championship. And about the top 20 guys in World Championship are as quick as World Championship. So you've got that ultimate speed, but you've just got more bodies doing that the higher up you go. So no matter where you are going to be measuring yourself against the very best. Now, Sanders going purple again in Sector 1, Sector 2.
He wants a clean sweep, pole win and fastest lap, and lead every lap. I think that's what he wants. And has he gone purple here?
So he's gone down to a 146. But that's not his quickest lap of the race. What's that about?
Oh no, it's Fernandez spins out in front of him. Not sure if Fernandez thankfully getting off the circuit, but I just saw Fernandez going off in front and nearly having a bit of an accident there.
Well, fortunately for him, turn 1, 2 has a very big runoff area. And that was where Prost and Senna ended up in, was it in 90?
93
or 91, when Prost drove for Ferrari and Senna took him out. And that's where the most misquoted Formula 1 quote of all time gets used, where Senna defended himself by saying, if you no longer go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver. But Senna had been counselled by Max Mosley. Senna's initial comments were, yeah, I took him out, I don't care. But Max Mosley said to him, look, that's a hanging offence. If you start saying that, you'll have your licence taken away. So he modified his statement. And then a year later, he finally admitted that it was on purpose. So if you've been using that quote, if you don't go for a gap, you're not a racing driver, I'm sorry, you're using a quote that was never legitimate anyway.
And if you want to make it legitimate, you say, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver.
So I certainly haven't been shying away from controversy tonight without any iRacing conversation, but, you know, we've got to keep ourselves entertained, haven't we? Now, Lucas Schmidt,
you've got to do something to keep yourself going.
Lucas Schmidt is going all green with his second times.
I think Peter Schultz has had enough as well, coming up through the S's. He looked very slow coming up through Dunlop. Yeah. Oh! I think he might have just grazed the barrier very slightly.
Who did that?
Peter Schultz coming through. Oh, that was... He actually just clipped the barrier. He was grazing it as he slid through there. So, amazing car control.
Do you think potentially, because he's not in a battle with Chris Raby, that he hasn't got enough to concentrate on?
What he's doing now is he's practicing for Formula Drift, just with a bit more horsepower. If you can drift this, you can drift anything. But no, the closest fight now on circuit actually is, I think, soon to be the Luke Maguire and Alvarez fight. So Invictus versus Ghost Speed.
Oh, I've been corrected by somebody in chat who's claiming that it was Balestri, not Mosley. Mosley spoke to him as well, Victor.
Balestre's saying that? That doesn't sound right.
Well, no, Balestri was the guy who...
Balestri was the enemy of Senna.
Yeah, Balestri was the guy who, after they came together in the McLarens, very unfairly went in and told the stewards, you've got to disqualify Senna. and which was absolutely corrupt. But it was, I watched the Max Mosley interview on Architects of Formula One, and no matter what you think of Mosley, it's a fantastic interview, and I came away with a lot more respect for Max Mosley than I had before. Peter Schultz is into the barriers, exited 3.
Oh god, he's having a horrible race.
And
Zaharov is out.
It was from...
oh, Zaharov is out. Oh, that's not a place you'd usually have an accident.
And...
wait, hold on. Zaharov was already driving without bodywork.
And yes, Victor, we're in complete agreement. Senna decided to take him out because unfairly they'd put pole position on the dirty side of the track. Senna should have had pole position, but Balestri made the decision to put Prost on the outside, which was totally out of order.
Oh, if Cameron's going to replay this, you need to go back to just before Dunlop for where the initial accident happened, because Zaharov, losing the rear end, hitting the barrier, losing his front and rear wing, continues round the lap through the Degners, goes off at the Degners, comes back on, goes up to the hairpin, goes off at the hairpin, spins round, does spins off there, comes back on, goes through the long right hander, comes towards Spoon, goes off again at Spoon, hits barrier, comes back on, goes down the back straight, loses the back end in the barrier, hits the barrier, spins round, and calls it a day. Right.
Well, that's really unfortunate because Dimitri has put up with a poor start and survived for 41 laps of the event and was running in the top 10. And I think at the start of the race he was running 20th. So real shame that he wasn't able to convert that into points.
And earlier on I said it was game on between Van Delft and Schmidt. It's no longer game on anymore because that gap has gone up. 7 seconds now that gap's gone up to. So that Abercrombie racing car, I think if he hadn't have done it in the pit stops, he would have still done it on track.
Yeah, flying. Felix Van Delft is flying, doing really, really well. Now, just talking about general things in Formula One, on YouTube you've got access to a fantastic set of interviews called Architects of Formula One, and I saw the best one I've ever seen, and it was a guy I'd never heard of called Joe Ramirez. And Joe was the hands-on guy under Ron Dennis at McLaren. Ron Dennis organised the money and Joe Ramirez organised the rest of the team. And what a wonderful and lovely human being he was, and what a fantastic interview. So I highly commend any of you that are interested in the history of Formula One, and particularly that amazing era with Prost and Senna and drivers like that. Sit through the Joe Ramirez Legends of Formula One interview. It was absolutely golden, and you'll come away from it feeling like you know him like a relative and just having nothing but affection for the guy. Just amazing stuff. Really, really moving. So there we go. So getting back to it, we've got only the podium unlapped. Only the podium on the same lap as Sander Callis.
Even that's going to probably fizzle down.
Well, he's got 55 seconds. He's going to run out of laps though, because he'd need about another 45 seconds to lap Lucas Schmidt, the next guy, and he's only got 10 laps left. So we're finally into the last 10 laps of this event, and it feels like we've been covering this race all weekend. Elise, I don't know how you feel, but for me, it feels like we've been here all weekend.
Yeah, I know. It's actually, for parts of it, it's gone by quite quickly. Part of it has gone slowly, but we've still got one little fight we can look forward to if it does come to fruition, because that fight between Maguire and Alvarez is getting even closer. You can actually see Maguire from on board with Alvarez at the moment. So that fight, Alvarez has got something to fight for. He's got a top 5 to fight for.
Indeed. And, you know, it's a bit unfair to get into debates with people in the comments, because we're the only guys with microphones, but I will respond to one comment that because the whole field but 3 have been lapped, that this brings the level of ACE into disrepute because of the variance in standard. What I would say that this is a 53 lap race. It's a wet weather race over a full World Championship distance, and you know, the majority of these drivers are within 1 lap of a guy who is a World Championship racer for next season. at a really, really high level. And if Sander wasn't in this race,
everyone would be on the lead lap.
Everybody would be on the same lap.
Yeah, most people would be on the same lap, actually.
And, you know, drive a full race distance on full wet weather in these cars and tell me that it's easy to stay in the same lap. So I do beg to differ, but I respect everybody's right to have their own opinion.
Of course, and as I say, I've never gone, oh, it's so easy to drive these cars, because for a start, I knew it wasn't. I knew it was easy to drive them normally, but to try and actually push them, it's a pain in the rear. Yeah. Especially when I did Monza. After I have never, ever, and I have about 300,000 more evers, going to criticise anyone who drives the Formula Sim racing car, this one, ever again.
Well, I think, that Elise, you probably had that experience of saying, well, you know, how hard can it be? And then turning up and finding out that the top guys in this league are very, very good at what they do.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
another suggestion that has come up of late is, well, you know, why don't we combine ACE and Pro?
Oh, God.
And that's for the simple reason that would involve having about 60 people on track, because we're getting...
No, we can't do that.
We're getting as many as 38 sign-ups for each Pro event, and only the top 30 can race. So 5, 6, 7, 8 people are being turned away because you just can't have a race with more than 30 Formula cars on track. So if we've got 20 here in this race, we'll have 30, minimum 30 racing in Pro tomorrow. So I wonder how you might combine that, how you might have a race for 50 people. So there's, you know, we've also got a factor that some people can't race on a Saturday. Some people can't race on a Sunday. So, you know, it's a distribution issue. We've got plenty of drivers to run 3 divisions because we've got 70 odd drivers, you know, 60 to 70 drivers each weekend competing. So we've got plenty of drivers to fill three divisions. And a wet race for the entirety of 53 laps, yeah, it's going to cause a bit more separation because it is incredibly hard. Some of the best drivers around have not managed to finish because it is just so incredibly hard. And to win a wet race or to podium on a wet race is a magnificent achievement. So,
of course, and like, you know, I'm going to say, but I'm just going to go back to my experience from Monza, because I did do Monza, as I've said a couple of times now, but you come into the races and you go, oh yeah, how hard can it be? Obviously, you know it can be quite difficult, especially with me. I knew it was going to be difficult in the first place because I'd driven the car prior, but you come in and then to do it in the dry and be competitive is bad enough. Yep. Like where Fernandez is right now, 3 laps, about 3, nearly 4 laps down, I was, oh God, I was about 4 or 5 laps down at this point. I was 4 laps down at this point.
Yep.
At Monza, and like, you think how hard it is to how hard it is to lose time at Monza, because it's straight, chicane, straight, or corner straight, chicane. Like, it's mainly straight. And it just shows how hard this car is, and that's...
Whoa, Alvaro almost had the massive off there. And the other thing
almost ended his race.
And the other things that, you know, that has happened is because we were having oversubscription for Pro, and this was explained a week ago, so people may not have watched that stream, so for their benefit I'll explain it again. We were getting 35, 36, 37 guys signing up for Pro and having to only let 30 race, so we were having to pre-qualify for Pro and people were just sent home. They didn't get to race. So ACE being the middle category, the top 3 go up to Championship, the top 3 from Pro go back up to ACE, so all things being equal, you keep the same number of drivers, but if anyone leaves, you're down on numbers. So ACE is always the one that sort of historically has struggled a bit for numbers at the middle of the season and the end of the season. So the decision was made to let people have a drive in ACE. So that meant that there were 4, 5 or 6 guys who probably should be in Pro, getting a chance to at least be on circuit and get a race done in ACE. So yeah,
or
there are a few
people
cars
who should have
in the
been
back
in AMA on the grid in ACE.
would normally be in Pro, but we can't fit them in. So it's a case of the lesser of 2 evils. Do you say to these people, sorry guys, you can't race, or we make a bit of room for you in ACE? And that was the decision. Oh, Alvarez has had a massive one, turned 12. I think.
Oh, that's no
think
front
he
wing.
might have been lucky enough to just lose front wing.
Yeah, so
yeah,
was going
he's lost
so
front
well
wing. He's got a very understeery car now, but he'll be able to make it back and finish. And of course, he's going to finish in the points. He's in 6th place at the moment.
But he won't drop out of the points anyway, and he'll still get a very good points for Invictus. So it's great for him.
You know, it's one thing to say, well, you know, I'm expecting this standard or that standard, but ultimately, this league is about racing, and we want people to have a chance to come out and race. Pro was over full. Ace had a bit of room. So we've got more of a mishmash of standards in Ace that we would have in normal circumstances. But let me tell you, the top 10 guys in Ace are incredibly fast racing drivers, and most of them can hold their own in World Championship. Lucas Schmidt will be racing in World Championship tomorrow. Sander Callis has achieved podium results in World Championship. So if the things happening between P9 and P20 aren't pleasing people, well, you know, I'm sorry, but we can't please everybody.
Well, no, and I'd rather have about, what, a 20-car grid full of drivers here in Ace than have what was going to be about, what, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10 cars, which is about half of what we've got here. And if that means that we take some of the guys who should either be in Pro or should be trying to get a bit more pace up or practicing a bit more in Ace, it fills the grids up. We get a bit of racing at the back as well in case we get the guys up front really spread out. We've got everything we need, and I don't see a problem with that. We're not hurting anyone.
No, and neither do I. And Ace is giving people that full-blown dress rehearsal for World Championship because they get everything the same. They get wet weather, they get a full race distance, and anywhere you look in the real world, you don't have 24 drivers performing at the same level as Lewis Hamilton. People learn, people evolve, and I say good on them for getting out there and having a go in full wet conditions. So there we have it. So 51 laps of 53. Well, Sander Callis just had an oversteer moment just before the entry
nearly off again.
into Dunlop. I don't think the track is getting any faster.
No,
he's back up into the 147s.
Well, I think he's just relaxing now. He knows he's only got a lap or two to go, so he's just relaxing back. But actually, I just want to go back to your point now and saying about Pro and stuff, because there used to be AMA as well, which was effectively GP2, which was free to race. Everyone could basically come in, have a go, and if they weren't quick, they weren't quick. So it didn't really matter. But then people decided, no, we don't want to do that. We want to go straight into Pro. Which meant that Pro did get oversubscribed, and a lot of teams came in because they went, "Oh, this is a good idea." I think.
Yeah, the other thing that happened with AMA was that the top handful of guys worked out, actually, I'm okay at this. I think I'll step up to Ace. So by the time you got halfway through your season, AMA had actually done its job. It was there to do that. It was there for people to get their feet wet, have a go, have a play, and a lot of them moved up into Pro. And so then you didn't have a full grid for AMA. Well, fantastic! It's done its job, you know.
Yeah.
But it was an easier car too.
But anyways, we come across Sander Callis for Netrex has started his final lap here at Suzuka, and we're there. It's been 1.5 hours of racing. Well, of tiptoeing around this circuit, let's be perfectly honest here, and something's happened to Schulzer. Something's happened to Schulzer, apparently.
Fastest lap.
Oh, Schulzer's got no front wing. He's had an accident after 130R.
He's pitting.
Yeah, he has no front wing.
Okay.
So
he's got time to put the wing on and get out and complete a lap.
Of course he has, but as I was saying, this race has been. Well, it's been Sander Callis domination, let's be fair. Pole, who's got the fastest lap? I need to have a look, actually, who's got the fastest lap at the moment.
A very strong performance from Sander, and it just shows he's a complete driver. He's quick in the dry, he's quick in the wet, he's quick at Monza, quick in Singapore, quick at Suzuka. And he is absolutely, he's done his time at finishing school. And he's ready now to drive full-time in World Championship next season, and I really do hope that Sander does. Estonian driver, driving for Netrex and doing a fantastic job. And hats off as well to Van Delft and Schmidt, just for keeping it on the black stuff nearly all the time.
Keeping it on the lead lap. But
so Sander Callis,
coming through the final corner, who wants to do it?
You can go for it.
Sander Callis coming round the final corner here at Suzuka to take victory here at the Japanese Grand Prix in Ace. Absolutely phenomenal job. Pole, win, led every lap, and has the fastest lap with a 1:45.615. takes the victory for NetRex here. He is the champion, as we all know. He's confirmed that last round, proving here today why he is champion. Over a 1 minute gap back to Felix van Delft, who is still currently circulating about halfway around the circuit at the moment. But what domination from a NetRex driver, just absolutely phenomenal. Keeping that car on the black stuff, basically, actually, the whole race. He never went off, as far as I'm aware.
It was a beautiful drive from Sander, and there were 3 levels today. There was the Sander Callis level, there was the podium level from Felix and Lucas, who both drove extremely well and gave us a lot of excitement there at the final pit stop. And then there was the rest of us, you know. So Felix van Delft now, as he negotiates the final chicane known as the Casio Triangle, puts the power down, and much to his great relief after no doubt an exciting but also very, very stressful race, and Felix van Delft crosses the finish line. The body language of the car shows his joy. Lucas Schmidt as well, taking a podium in ACE, no small thing, and this is Lucas Schmidt's 4th podium of the season, best result of 2nd, so fantastic result from Lucas Schmidt. Sergi Eras is currently negotiating.
Yeah, Sergi Harris is 4th, so he's crossed the line already. Sergi Harris 4th, Luke Maguire 5th, Alvarez crosses the line for 6th, Schultz 7th, so coming across the line in 7th, Van der Weide 8th, 9th, and finally last is Fernandez, finishing in the points 3 laps down. So maybe we could see more of Fernandez in the rest of this season.
Well, indeed, he's acquitted himself very well, and well, that's the only race I've commented on where it was full wets for 3 stints. And you know, if anybody's not sure what that takes out of you, go and drive 10 laps in full wet conditions and see how much it takes, because the 13 seconds extra over a dry lap is not 13 seconds of thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner. It's 13 seconds of sheer stress as you negotiate that car sliding on corner entry, sliding mid-corner, you know, wheel spinning on exit. So fabulous drive from Sander Callis. Have you got any thoughts on driver of the day, Elise?
I've got 2, and one would be for the recovery drive, and one would be for Sander. One would be for Sander because he's just been dominant, but the recovery drive, I'd say, would have to go to Sergi Harris, because you think lap 1 he had to come in for that pit stop, which was for a front wing change, and that whole race he has worked his way back up that order, overtaking cars on track, overtaking cars on the pit stops, taken cars that have sadly retired, and he has finished 4th. Finished 4th, and the last car that was the first car that was 1 lap down. Yeah, that is phenomenal.
Good call. Good call. Yeah, I always cheat and name more than one person. Oh, I'm not going to name a driver of the day. I'm going to say fantastic drive from Sander Callis. We've come to expect that sort of dominance from him, and there is no bigger way to show that talent than in a lights to flag, never headed
there's a crash on the
from pole in the wet. But I'll also mention the other 2 podium getters, you know, Van Delft and Schmidt, who not just drove faultlessly, but drove faultlessly in close combat for much of the race. And Van Delft, you've got to take your hat off to him by managing to pull that pass off through strategy. So very entertaining race, a long race for us in the commentary booth. Apologies to the viewers for the technical hitches at the beginning. That happens in the virtual world. And well done to the drivers. So unless you've got anything to add, Elise, we'll wind it up on that, and thank everybody for viewing, and welcome you to come same time tomorrow for the championship race, and a little bit earlier in the day for the pro race, in which I'll be trying to do my best as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been absolutely phenomenal racing, and it's been absolutely phenomenal to come and join you guys. First commentary here in FSR ACE and in FSR in general, so it's been an absolute pleasure, an absolute honour to be here. Thank you so much, Cameron, for the cameras and race direction, and thank you, David, for being a reliable colleague alongside me in the commentary booth.
Yeah, no, real pleasure.
Do you want to wrap this one up?
Real pleasure, and great run, Elise, great job in commentary, Elise, and I'm sure we'll work again together in the future. So thanks, guys. Thanks to the race director. Thanks to the broadcaster, and thanks to all drivers for putting on a fantastic show.